Good evening, America. The woods remember you. I'm Nightfeed. And if you dare to listen till the end, subscribe. And leave your mark in the comments below. Some places don't just remember the dead, they feed on them. The recording was found 3 weeks after Dr. Sarah Chen disappeared into the Cascade Mountains. Her voice, distorted by static and something else, something wet and breathing, crackled through the recovered equipment. Day 47. The trees are watching. Not metaphorically. I can see eyes in the bark. Human eyes blinking. The research team. God, the research team is still here. All of them. But they're not. They're not them anymore. Last night, I heard my own voice calling from the forest. But I was in my tent. I was inside my tent. Whatever is in Black Hollow, it doesn't just kill you. It wears you. It becomes you. And the worst part? The absolute worst part is that I'm starting to forget which voice is mine. The tape ends with screaming, then laughter, then silence. But that wasn't the last time anyone heard from Black Hollow. The cursor blinked on Marcus Webb's laptop screen, a tiny heartbeat of light in the darkness of his Seattle apartment. 3:47 a.m. Outside, rain hammered against the windows with the relentless rhythm that defined Pacific Northwest autumns. The sound usually soothed him, but tonight it felt accusatory. Thousands of tiny fingers tapping, 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 demanding answers he didn't have. The insomnia had been getting worse. 6 months since the incident at Cedar Memorial Hospital. 6 months since Michael Torres had died on his watch. 23-year-old construction worker came in complaining of chest pains. Textbook presentation. Marcus had done everything right, or thought he had. EKG, blood work, physical exam. Nothing alarming. Told the kid to rest, that it was probably anxiety or muscle strain. Sent him home with a prescription for muscle relaxants. Michael collapsed in the parking lot 12 minutes later. Massive cardiac arrest. Undiagnosed congenital heart defect that wouldn't have shown on a standard EKG. By the time they got him back inside, his brain had been without oxygen for too long. He died 3 days later without regaining consciousness. Not Marcus's fault, the review board said. Impossible to catch without specialized testing. No negligence, no malpractice, just bad luck. But Marcus heard the flatline every night, saw Michael's mother collapsing in the waiting room when they gave her the news, felt the weight of a life that had ended because he'd made a judgment call that turned out to be wrong. The review board could absolve him. His colleagues could reassure him. His therapist could walk him through cognitive behavioral techniques until they both ran out of words. None of it made the sound stop. Marcus clicked refresh on his email for the 100th time that night. It was a compulsion now, this constant checking, as if the perfect opportunity, the perfect escape, the perfect way to prove he wasn't a failure would arrive in his inbox if he just looked often enough. And there it was. The email appeared at the top of his inbox like it had been waiting for exactly this moment. 3:47 a.m. on a Thursday morning, when Marcus Webb was at his most vulnerable, his most desperate, his most likely to make catastrophically bad decisions. Subject: research opportunity, Black Hollow Ecological Station. Urgent. Marcus frowned. He didn't recognize the sender. admin@blackhollowsearch.org, mail to admin@blackhollowresearch.org. The domain looked legitimate enough, but something about the timing made his skin crawl. 3:47 a.m. Who sent professional correspondence at 3:47 in the morning? His finger hovered over the delete button. Spam. Had to be spam. Or a phishing attempt. Or one of those elaborate scams that preyed on desperate people. And God, he was desperate, wasn't he? Desperate enough to open suspicious emails in the middle of the night. Desperate enough to consider anything that might offer escape from the endless loop of guilt and recrimination that had become his life. But something made him open it anyway. Maybe it was the word urgent in all caps. Maybe it was the professional-looking header. Or maybe it was just that at 3:47 a.m., alone in his dark apartment with rain hammering outside and the ghost of Michael Torres's flatline echoing in his ears, Marcus Webb would have opened an email from Satan himself if it promised relief. The message loaded slowly, as if the sender was on the other side of a vast distance. Each line appeared with a slight delay, like someone was typing it in real time. Dear Dr. Webb, your expertise in psychological trauma and wilderness medicine has come to our attention. We are assembling a small team for a 6-week research expedition to Black Hollow Ecological Station. in the Cascade Mountains of Oregon. The previous research team experienced complications, and we need someone with your unique qualifications to help complete their work. Marcus felt his chest tighten. Wilderness medicine wasn't really his specialty. He'd done a rotation in rural emergency care during his residency, but that was years ago. And complications was a word that could mean anything, from personality conflicts to mass casualties. Professional correspondence didn't use ellipses like that. Didn't leave implications hanging. He should close the email. Should delete it and forget it existed. But he kept reading. Compensation $75,000 for 6 weeks, plus full medical coverage. Marcus's breath caught. $75,000. That was more than he made in half a year at Cedar Memorial. That was enough to pay off his student loans, to get out from under the crushing debt that had accumulated during medical school and residency. Enough to maybe possibly start over somewhere new, where people didn't know about Michael Torres. We understand you've been on leave from Cedar Memorial. We believe this opportunity could benefit both your career and your personal recovery. The apartment suddenly felt colder. How did they know about his leave? That information wasn't public. The hospital had been discreet. Personal time was the official explanation. Nothing in his file about the review board, or the breakdown he'd had in the physician's lounge, or the pills his psychiatrist had prescribed. Marcus stood up from his desk, laptop in hand, and walked to the window. The rain had intensified, water streaming down the glass in thick rivulets that distorted the streetlights below. His reflection stared back at him, gaunt, unshaven, eyes hollow with exhaustion. When had he last looked healthy? When had he last looked like someone who should be trusted with other people's lives? Time is of the essence. Please respond within 24 hours if interested. The forest is waiting. Director Evelyn Cross, that last line stopped him cold. The forest is waiting. What kind of professional correspondence ended like that? It was poetic, almost mystical, completely inappropriate for a job offer from an ecological research station. Red flags. So many red flags, but also $75,000. 6 weeks away from Seattle, away from Cedar Memorial, away from the places where Michael Torres's ghost lingered. 6 weeks in the mountains doing work that might actually help people. That might prove he wasn't a complete failure. That might give him some purpose beyond refreshing his email at 3:47 a.m. and counting the hours until he could justify taking another sleeping pill. Marcus's therapist would tell him this was avoidance. His ex-wife, Jennifer, would say he was running from his problems instead of dealing with them. His sister would worry that he was making impulsive decisions while in a vulnerable state. They'd all be right, but they weren't here at 3:47 a.m. in this dark apartment, with the rain falling and the guilt crushing and the flatline echoing. They didn't understand that sometimes avoidance was the only survival strategy left. Marcus returned to his desk. His hands moved across the keyboard before his brain could catch up and stop them. I'm interested. What are the details? He hit send before he could reconsider. Before common sense could reassert itself. Before fear could win. The response came in 14 seconds, 14 seconds. Nobody responded that fast. Not at 3:47 a.m., not unless they'd been waiting, watching, ready. Pack for cold weather and isolation. A car will pick you up tomorrow at noon. Bring everything you might need. You won't be able to leave once you're there. Welcome to Black Hollow. Marcus read the message 3 times. You won't be able to leave once you're there. That should have been alarming. That should have made him delete the email, block the sender, maybe even report it to the police. Instead, he opened his closet and started packing. The rest of the night passed in a blur of activity. Marcus pulled his old camping gear from storage, tent, sleeping bag, hiking boots he hadn't worn since a disastrous camping trip with Jennifer 3 years ago. He packed clothes suitable for mountain weather, thermal underwear, fleece layers, waterproof jacket, medical supplies from his work bag, basic first aid kit, prescription medications, a stethoscope he wasn't sure why he was bringing, at 5:30 a.m. As grey dawn light began filtering through the rain, Marcus sat on his bed surrounded by packed bags and tried to remember if there was anything he was forgetting. Anyone he should tell where he was going. His sister lived in Portland, close enough to visit regularly, far enough that they'd grown comfortable with weeks of no contact. He could text her, but what would he say? Hey, going into the mountains for 6 weeks with people I've never met to do research I'm not qualified for. Don't worry if you can't reach me. His ex-wife Jennifer had moved on. Remarried even, to a software engineer named David, who probably didn't wake up at 3 a.m. hearing the sounds of patients dying. She didn't. Colleagues at Cedar Memorial. Well, they'd probably be relieved he was leaving, taking the awkwardness with him. The living reminder that any of them could make one wrong judgment call and end up where he was. Marcus pulled out his phone and typed a simple message to his sister, taking a research position in Oregon for 6 weeks. Limited contact, don't worry, love you short. Honest enough to be technically true while concealing everything that mattered. He pressed send and turned off his phone. At 6 a.m. Marcus tried to sleep. Didn't work. His mind kept circling back to the email, to the odd phrasing, to the feeling that he was making a terrible mistake, but was too far committed to back out now. At 9 a.m. he showered and shaved, trying to make himself look like someone who hadn't spent 6 months spiraling into depression and insomnia. The mirror showed limited success. At 11:30 a.m., Marcus stood at his apartment window, bags at his feet, watching the street below for a black SUV that probably wouldn't come, because this was all probably an elaborate scam, and he'd been stupid enough to fall for it. The SUV arrived at exactly noon. No company logo, no identifying marks, just tinted windows dark enough to violate every window tint law in Washington, and a driver who emerged to load Marcus's bags without saying a word. Marcus got his first good look at the driver as the man, late 40s, muscular, with weather-beaten skin and eyes that seemed to look through rather than at him, hefted the bags into the trunk with mechanical efficiency. Hi, Marcus said, feeling foolish. I'm Dr. Webb, Marcus Webb. The driver nodded curtly, said nothing. You're here to take me to Black Hollow? Another nod. Right. Okay. So we should probably go? The driver opened the rear door, gestured for Marcus to get in. Still silent, Marcus climbed into the back seat. The interior smelled like leather and something else, something earthy and damp, like soil after rain. His phone was in his pocket, showing 1 bar of signal that would probably disappear within the hour. Last chance to back out. Last chance to tell the driver this was a mistake, to grab his bags and go back to his apartment and his insomnia and his guilt. Marcus said nothing. The driver got in, started the engine, and pulled away from the curb. Seattle disappeared in the rearview mirror. For the first hour, Marcus tried to make conversation, asked about the weather, about the drive, about Black Hollow itself. The driver responded to exactly none of it, eyes fixed on the road with the intensity of someone driving through enemy territory. After the first hour, Marcus gave up and stared out the window. The landscape changed gradually, almost imperceptibly, suburban sprawl giving way to strip malls, giving way to small towns, giving way to nothing but forest and highway. The trees grew taller, denser, pressing closer to the road like they wanted to reclaim the asphalt. Douglas fir and western hemlock towered overhead, their branches interlocking to form a canopy that blocked most of the afternoon light. Marcus's phone signal died after the first hour, as predicted. 2 bars, 1 bar, no service. The screen mocked him with its complete uselessness. He tucked it back into his pocket and tried not to think about how cut off he was now. No way to call for help, no way to tell anyone where he was going, no way to change his mind and ask the silent driver to turn around. The rain that had been falling in Seattle didn't reach this far inland. Instead, the sky was overcast, heavy with clouds that seemed to hang just above the treetops. The light had a strange quality, grey and diffuse, making it impossible to tell what time it was or how long they'd been driving. Marcus checked his watch. 2:30 p.m. They'd been on the road for 2.5 hours. The email had mentioned 4 hours to the trailhead, which meant they were about halfway there, halfway to the point of no return. So, Marcus tried again, desperate for any human interaction. How long have you been working for Black Hollow? The driver's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. For a moment, Marcus thought he might actually get a response. Then the eyes shifted back to the road. Silence. Right, okay, strong, silent type. I get it. More silence. Marcus was starting to regret this entire decision, starting to plan how he'd get back to civilization once this nightmare job was over, When the driver finally spoke, "How long is the drive?" Marcus had asked. The driver's eyes met his in the rearview mirror. They were an unusual color, almost yellow in certain light, like amber or old brass, or like the eyes of an animal caught in headlights. 4 hours to the trailhead, the driver said. His voice was rough, gravelly, like he didn't use it often. Then you hike the rest. Hike, nobody mentioned. The station is inaccessible by vehicle. 8 miles into the forest. Someone will meet you at the trailhead. 8 miles. Through mountain forest. Carrying all his gear. Marcus had been hiking before, casual day trips, nothing serious. But 8 miles with a full pack. That was a different proposition entirely. Is there? I mean, is the trail well marked? Stay on the marked trail, the driver said. Don't leave the path. Something about the way he said it made Marcus's skin crawl. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a warning. What happens if I leave the path? The driver was quiet for so long, Marcus thought he wouldn't answer. The trees outside grew denser, darker, their trunks thick with moss and their branches heavy with what looked like fungus, pale growths that clustered on the bark like tumors. Then people disappear. Not in the way you'd expect, lost hikers, animal attacks. They disappear and come back wrong, or things come back wearing their faces. Marcus laughed nervously. Is this part of the orientation? Scare the new guy? The driver didn't laugh, didn't smile, just kept driving with those strange yellow eyes fixed on the road ahead. I'm driving you as far as the trailhead, not one step further, and I'm leaving before dark, Dr. Webb. Nothing personal. But what about before dark? The emphasis on those 2 words shut down any further conversation. Marcus settled back into his seat and watched the forest crawl past. They drove for another hour and a half in complete silence. Marcus noticed things he wished he hadn't. The way the trees seemed to lean toward the road, their branches reaching out like grasping fingers. The absence of wildlife. No birds, no squirrels, no deer visible in the forest. The occasional abandoned car rusting in the underbrush, vehicles that had been left to rot decades ago, and the signs. The first one was official, white text on green. Background maintained by the Forest Service, El Black Hollow State Forest, no camping without permit stay on marked trails, simple, standard. But someone had added beneath it in spray paint. Turn back more signs appeared as they drove deeper. Some official, some homemade, all increasingly disturbing. Warning: hazardous area missing persons zone. Enter at own risk the forest. Remembers, and finally, crudely painted on a piece of plywood nailed to a tree. It takes what it wants, charming place, Marcus muttered. The driver's eyes flicked to the mirror again. You ever been to Black Hollow before, Dr. Webb? No, should I have? Most people avoid it. The locals. They don't go into the deep forest. Not since the 1980s. Why not? The driver was quiet for a long moment. Trees flickered past, darker now, their bark almost black in the fading afternoon light. Marcus could see more of those pale fungal growths, some as large as dinner plates, clustered on the trunks in patterns that looked almost deliberate. Because, the driver said finally, people disappear, and sometimes they come back, but they're not the same. They move wrong, talk wrong, like something learned how to wear a human body, but didn't quite get the details right. That's ridiculous. My brother went into Black Hollow in 2009, the driver interrupted. His voice was flat, emotionless, but Marcus could hear the pain beneath it. Hunting trip, him and 3 buddies. They were experienced, knew the forest, knew how to handle themselves. But something went wrong. His buddies came back after a week, said they'd gotten separated from Jake, said they'd searched but couldn't find him. The driver's hands tightened on the steering wheel. 3 months later, Jake showed up at my door. Looked exactly like himself. Talked like himself, remembered our childhood, our parents, everything. But he was wrong. His eyes didn't blink quite right. He smiled too much. He ate food, but you could tell he didn't taste it, like he was just going through the motions. Maybe he had some kind of... He called me by my nickname, the one only Jake knew, the one from when we were kids. But he said it wrong. The emphasis was off. Like he'd heard someone say it, but didn't understand the emotion behind it. The driver glanced in the mirror. I asked him questions only Jake would know. He answered all of them correctly, but it was like reading from a script. No hesitation, no natural memory recall, just information being accessed. Marcus felt cold despite the heater blowing warm air. What happened to him? Disappeared again after 2 weeks. I came home from work and he was just gone, left no note, took nothing, just vanished. The driver's jaw clenched. But sometimes I see him, standing at the edge of the forest, watching, learning, getting better at being Jake. I'm sorry, Marcus said, because what else could he say? The story was clearly disturbing the driver, and whether it was true or delusion or local legend, it deserved acknowledgement. Don't be sorry. Just be careful. Whatever's in that forest, Dr. Webb, it's patient, and it's smart, and it's always watching. They drove in silence after that. Marcus tried to tell himself it was all superstition, local folklore designed to explain disappearances that had mundane see. Jerk in her research. Evelyn's voice tightened slightly. We haven't heard from her in 23 days. Marcus stopped walking. You're telling me there's someone still out here? Someone who's been missing for 3 weeks? Why aren't the authorities? Doctor, Jen is a colleague and a friend, but she's also an adult who made her choice. Evelyn turned to face him, and in the filtered green light, her face looked almost skeletal, all sharp angles and shadows. Local search and rescue won't come into Black Hollow anymore. Too many of their own have been affected. That's partly why you're here, Dr. Webb. We need to understand what happened, why this place affects people the way it does. And you think I can help because you understand trauma. You understand how the mind breaks under pressure. You've seen it in your patients, studied it in your research, and because... She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. The expression looked practiced, artificial, like something she'd learned to do but didn't quite understand the purpose of. Because you're broken yourself, aren't you? The patient you lost, Michael Torres, 23 years old, cardiac arrest in the parking lot. You sent him home thinking it was anxiety, but it was a congenital heart defect, and he died 3 days later without ever waking up. Marcus felt his blood go cold. The forest sounds, what few there were, seemed to fade away, leaving only the hammering of his heart and the rushing of blood in his ears. How do you know about that? His voice came out as barely more than a whisper. We're thorough in our research, Doctor, just as you'll need to be in yours. Evelyn resumed hiking, moving deeper into the forest with that same confident, almost mechanical stride. The station is another 2 hours. Save your questions. You'll need your breath for the climb. Marcus stood frozen for a moment, mind reeling. The details she'd mentioned, Michael's age, the cardiac arrest, even the congenital heart defect that hadn't shown on standard testing, those weren't public record. The review board had been confidential. The legal settlement with Michael's family had included non-disclosure agreements. Nobody should know those details, except Marcus, the hospital administration, and the lawyers. So how did Evelyn Cross know? Dr. Webb, she called back without turning around. We need to keep moving. The forest is safest during daylight hours. Safest from what? But she was already too far ahead to hear him, or she was pretending not to hear. Marcus hefted his bags and hurried after her, trying to ignore the creeping sensation that he was being watched. The trail grew steeper as they climbed. Marcus's lungs burned. Sweat soaked his shirt despite the cold air. His bags seemed to grow heavier with every step, straps digging into his shoulders. But Evelyn maintained the same steady pace, never slowing, never showing signs of fatigue like a machine programmed to hike. The forest grew darker as they walked. Though Marcus's watch insisted it was only 3 in the afternoon, the trees seemed to lean inward, their branches interlocking overhead, to block out what little sky was visible. Several times, Marcus could have sworn he saw movement in his peripheral vision, quick, darting shapes that vanished when he turned his head. Shadows that moved wrong, branches that seemed to reach toward him. Did you see that? He whispered. See what? There was something... He pointed to a gap between 2 massive hemlocks. Something moving, between those trees. Evelyn stopped. Her hand moved to the knife at her belt. A serious hunting knife, Marcus noticed, not a small camping tool or Swiss Army knife. This was a weapon designed for serious use. Probably a deer, or an elk. The wildlife here is skittish. It didn't move like a deer. What did it move like? Marcus struggled to find words. He'd only glimpsed it for a fraction of a second, but the movement had been wrong somehow. Unnatural. Like it was, copying something, like it had learned to move but didn't quite get it right. Like stop-motion animation, jerky and too fast. Evelyn's face went very still. Her hand tightened on the knife handle. Did it see you? Make eye contact? Don't know. Maybe. She grabbed his arm, her grip painful, fingers digging into muscle with surprising strength. If you see anything like that again, you tell me immediately. You don't investigate, you don't call out to it, you don't try to get a better look. You tell me. Understood? What is it? What's out there? Understood? Yes. Jesus, yes, understood. She released him and started walking again, faster now. Marcus noticed her constantly scanning the forest, her hand never far from the knife. her head swiveled from side to side, checking shadows, watching for movement. Whatever she'd seen in Black Hollow, whatever had happened to the previous research team, it had left her genuinely afraid. That was more disturbing than anything else. This woman, experienced, professional, clearly capable, was scared. Actually, genuinely scared of what lived in these trees. They climbed higher into the mountains, the trail growing steeper, rockier. Tree roots crossed the path like grasping fingers. Loose stones rolled beneath Marcus's boots. His legs ached, his lungs burned. But worse than the physical exhaustion was the growing sensation of being watched, not by animals, by something intelligent, something patient, something that had all the time in the world to study him, learn him, figure out how best to use him. How much further? He gasped. Another 20 minutes. The station is just over this ridge. Marcus pushed himself harder, driven by the irrational conviction that reaching the station meant safety, civilization, other people, protection from whatever lurked in the shadows between these ancient trees. They crested a steep incline, pushing through a wall of dense underbrush that caught at Marcus's clothes and bags, and stopped. The Black Hollow Ecological Station was not what Marcus had expected. Instead of a rustic cabin or modest research facility, he saw a compound. 3 large buildings arranged in a triangle around a central clearing, all constructed from dark wood that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Solar panels covered the roofs, expensive professional-grade equipment. A satellite dish pointed at the sliver of sky visible through the canopy. Generator sheds, storage buildings. Everything looked new, expensive, and completely out of place in the middle of nowhere. This wasn't a simple ecological research station. This was a serious facility, the kind that required significant funding and resources, the kind that governments or major corporations built when they wanted to study something important, something valuable, something dangerous. But what struck Marcus most was the silence. No generators humming, no lights in the windows, no movement at all. The clearing was empty except for dead leaves and fallen pine needles. The buildings looked abandoned, though they couldn't be. Evelyn had said there was still a team here. "Where is everyone?" he asked, waiting inside. "The team doesn't like to be exposed during the transition hours." Evelyn checked her watch, a heavy, expensive-looking timepiece that seemed out of place on her weathered wrist. "We're cutting it close. Come on." They crossed the clearing quickly. Marcus noticed things that made his medical training raise alarms. The building's walls bore long, deep gouges in the wood, like something with claws had been trying to get in, or out. Scratches that started at ground level and extended up to the roofline. Some of the gouges were fresh, the wood still pale and raw. Others were older, weathered, suggesting this had been happening for a while. The windows were covered with heavy metal shutters from the inside, secured with industrial padlocks. Every single window. Even on the second floor. The main building's door was solid steel, the kind used in bank vaults or military facilities. Multiple locks ran down its length, deadbolts, chain locks, a keycard reader, even an old-fashioned crossbar. Evelyn produced a keycard, swiped it through the reader, entered a code on a numeric pad, and then used 3 different physical keys to unlock the remaining mechanisms. "So that's a lot of security for a research station," Marcus observed. "It keeps things out," Evelyn said. She paused, her hand on the door handle. "And it keeps us in. Once you enter, Dr. Webb, you're committed to the full 6 weeks. The security protocols don't allow for casual coming and going. It's for everyone's safety. What are you protecting us from?" Evelyn pushed the door open. "Everything." "Welcome," she said, "to Black Hollow Station." Marcus stepped inside. The door slammed shut behind him with a sound like a coffin closing. He heard Evelyn working the locks, heard each mechanism slide into place with mechanical finality. Click, 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 click. 5 locks between him and the outside world. The interior of Black Hollow Station was a jarring contrast to the primeval forest outside. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, too bright after the dim green light of the forest, making Marcus squint. White walls, linoleum floors. Equipment filled every available surface. Laptops, satellite phones, weather instruments, medical supplies, boxes of what looked like scientific equipment. A corkboard on one wall held maps, charts, photographs. A whiteboard displayed complex diagrams and equations Marcus couldn't decipher. It looked like a cross between a research lab, a bunker, and a command center preparing for war, and it was completely empty. "Hello," Marcus called out. His voice echoed strangely, as if the space were larger than it appeared or somehow acoustically wrong. "They're in the common room," Evelyn said, locking the door behind them. Marcus counted the locks as she worked. 5 separate mechanisms, each with its own key or code. "Protocol dictates we secure all. Entry points before nightfall. Why? What happens at night?" She didn't answer. Just moved deeper into the building, her boots clicking on the linoleum with mechanical precision. Marcus followed her down a corridor lined with closed doors. Each door bore a neat label: equipment storage, medical bay, communications, director's office, laboratory. Sample storage. Some of the labels had been modified, crossed out and rewritten, as if the room's purposes had changed. One door's label had been scratched off entirely, leaving only raw wood beneath. At the end of the hall, warm light spilled from an open doorway. Voices drifted out, low, tense conversation that stopped the moment Evelyn's shadow fell across the threshold. The common room was smaller than Marcus expected, maybe 20 feet square, with mismatched furniture clustered around a wood stove. A kitchenette occupied one wall, basic but functional. Bookshelves lined another wall, crammed with both scientific texts and fiction. A card table held what looked like an interrupted game of chess, and 3 people sat around the main table, scattered papers and half-empty coffee cups between them. They all turned to stare at Marcus, with expressions ranging from curiosity to something that looked like fear, or maybe pity. The silence stretched uncomfortably as they studied him, this new arrival, this outsider, this person who'd willingly walked into Black Hollow despite all the warnings. "Everyone," Evelyn announced, her voice cutting through the tension, "this is Dr. Marcus Webb, our new psychological consultant. Dr. Webb, meet what's left of the research team." The first to stand was a man in his late 20s, tall and gangly with red hair tied in a ponytail that hung halfway down his back. He wore a flannel shirt that had seen better days, and jeans with holes at the knees. His handshake was firm, but his palms were sweaty, almost feverishly hot. "James Keller," he said. His voice had a manic edge to it, words tumbling out too fast. "Ecologist. I study fungal networks and forest communication systems, specifically mycorrhizal networks, the symbiotic relationships between fungi and tree roots. It's fascinating, really, the way information travels through the forest, like a biological internet. Neurons firing except it's trees talking to each other through chemical signals and—" He stopped himself, laughed nervously. "Sorry, I tend to ramble when I'm stressed. Welcome to the most isolated research station you'll ever regret visiting." "James," Evelyn warned, her voice sharp. "What?" "It's true. We're 8 miles from the nearest road. 0 cell service. And the satellite phone only works when the trees aren't interfering with the signal." He gestured around the room, his movements jerky, agitated. "Which is most of the time. And by interfering, I don't mean normal atmospheric interference or technical difficulties. I mean the forest actively blocking our communications. Deliberately, I've documented it. The signal strength drops exactly when we try to call out, and returns to normal when we stop trying." "That's paranoid speculation," Evelyn said. "Is it? Or is it documented scientific observation?" James's eyes were too bright, too intense. Marcus recognized the look. Sleep deprivation, possibly stimulant use, definitely high anxiety. "Dr. Webb, have you ever considered that forests might be conscious? Not in the way humans are conscious, but aware nonetheless. Because I have data suggesting—" "James, you're scaring him," a woman's voice interrupted. Calm, controlled, with just a hint of exasperation. The second person was a woman in her 30s, compact and muscular, with dark skin and close-cropped hair. She wore practical cargo pants and a thermal shirt. And when she stood to offer her hand, Marcus noticed she moved with the controlled precision of someone with military or law enforcement training. Her handshake was brief, professional, perfectly calibrated in pressure and duration. "Dr. Amara Johnson," she said. Her voice was clipped, authoritative. "Geologist. I map the cave systems beneath Black Hollow and analyze the geological composition of the area. Or I did until we sealed the entrance to the main cavern 3 weeks ago." Marcus blinked. "Sealed it? Why would you—" You'll find out soon enough, Amara said, returning to her seat with that same controlled movement. Just don't go near the southern perimeter, the area beyond the fence. Trust me on that. What's at the southern perimeter? Amara and James exchanged a look. Some wordless communication that Marcus couldn't read but didn't like. Fear, warning, shared knowledge of something terrible? The entrance to the cave system, Amara said finally. Where the mycelial network is most concentrated. Where the phenomena are strongest. Phenomena? Later, Evelyn interjected. Let Marcus meet everyone first. Get oriented. There's time for the disturbing details. The third person hadn't stood, hadn't offered a hand. Just sat hunched over his laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. Eyes fixed on the screen like if he looked away for even a second, something terrible would happen. He was younger than the others, barely out of college, Marcus guessed. Maybe 23, 24 at most. Pale, with dark circles under his eyes so pronounced they looked like bruises. His hair hung in greasy strands, uncombed. He wore a hoodie despite the warmth from the wood stove, hood pulled up, hiding in plain sight. Marcus noticed the kid's fingernails first, chewed down to the quick, several bleeding, the cuticles red and infected. Not nervous habit bleeding, compulsive self-harm bleeding, the kind that indicated serious psychological distress. Tommy, the kid said quietly, not looking up from his screen. Just Tommy, I'm the tech guy. I maintain the equipment, manage the data systems, keep everything running. He paused, fingers never stopping their dance across the keyboard. Or I try to. The forest makes it difficult. Tommy's being modest, Evelyn said, but there was something off in her tone. Not quite mockery, not quite concern. He's the only reason we still have power in communications. The forest has a tendency to interfere with technology. Equipment fails in ways that shouldn't be possible. Hard drives corrupt themselves. Batteries drain in minutes. Cameras capture things that weren't there. Tommy's the only one who can keep things running. How does the forest interfere with technology? Marcus asked, trying to keep his voice neutral, professional, not betraying the growing conviction that he'd walked into a group of people experiencing shared psychosis. Electromagnetic fields, Tommy said, still not looking up. The mycelial network generates massive EMF. We've documented it. Spikes that shouldn't be possible from organic tissue. Sometimes reaching levels that fry circuits, scramble data. Other times it's more subtle, like it's learning, testing, figuring out how our technology works so it can... He trailed off, fingers freezing on the keyboard for just a moment before resuming. So it can use it. Use it for what? Tommy finally looked up. His eyes were wrong, dilated pupils, bloodshot whites, but more than that. They had a haunted quality Marcus had seen before in trauma patients. People who'd witnessed things they couldn't process, couldn't explain, couldn't escape from. Communication, Tommy whispered. It wants to talk to us, or through us. Or maybe it wants to become us. I'm not sure anymore. Silence fell over the common room. The wood stove crackled. Somewhere in the building something hummed. Electrical equipment, generators, the ever-present background noise of modern life. But underneath it, Marcus could hear something else. A lower frequency, almost subsonic, like the building itself was breathing. Marcus pulled out a chair and sat down slowly, his medical bag settling at his feet with a heavy thud. He looked at each face in turn, James with his manic energy and desperate need to explain everything, Amara with her military bearing barely concealing deep-seated fear, Tommy with his bleeding fingers and thousand-yard stare, and Evelyn with her dark eyes that seemed to see too much. This was his team. These were the people he'd be living with, working with, depending on for the next 6 weeks. They were all clearly traumatized, possibly delusional. Definitely not in any state to be conducting scientific research in isolation. And Marcus was now trapped here with them. Okay, he said, trying to project calm confidence he absolutely didn't feel. Someone want to explain what's actually going on here? Because I was hired to provide psychological support for a standard ecological research project. And everything I've seen so far suggests this is anything but standard. The silence that followed was so profound, Marcus could hear his own heartbeat, could hear the blood rushing through his ears, could hear what might have been wind outside or might have been something else scratching at the walls. Finally, James laughed, a bitter, exhausted sound that had no humor in it at all. Standard? Jesus Christ, Director, you want to tell him, or should I? Evelyn poured herself a cup of coffee from a percolator on the kitchenette counter, moving with deliberate calm that suggested she'd done this many times before. Delivered terrible news, explained impossible things, tried to make the incomprehensible sound reasonable. Dr. Webb, she said, returning to the table with her mug cradled in both hands. What do you know about mycorrhizal networks? Marcus searched his memory. He'd taken some ecology courses in undergrad before deciding medicine was his path. Fungal connections between trees. They share nutrients, communicate through chemical signals. Some people call it the wood wide web. It's how forests function as connected systems, rather than individual trees competing for resources. Exactly. Evelyn sat down, her movements precise and rolled. James has been studying the mycorrhizal network here in Black Hollow for 3 years. It's the largest and most complex network ever discovered. Millions of trees connected across thousands of acres, with fungal filaments totaling billions of miles in length. The oldest trees in this forest are over 500 years old, and they've been connected the entire time, sharing resources, sharing information, growing together. That sounds remarkable but not particularly alarming, Marcus said carefully. It wouldn't be, except for what we've discovered about what the network shares. Evelyn took a long drink of coffee, as if fortifying herself. It's not just nutrients and water. It's not just chemical signals indicating stress or disease. It's sharing information, complex information. Memories, Marcus frowned. Trees don't have memories. They don't have nervous systems or brains. Memory requires information storage and retrieval, James interrupted, pulling his laptop around to face Marcus. The screen showed a complex web of lines and nodes, like a neural network diagram but organic, branching in fractal patterns. And the mycelial network has exactly that. Look at this. He pulled up data. Electrical readings, chemical analysis, scan after scan showing structures that look disturbingly like neural tissue. The mycelium in Black Hollow isn't normal fungus. We've analyzed samples under electron microscopes. It has structures that resemble synapses, actual synaptic connections. It produces neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, acetylcholine, all the chemicals that allow neurons to communicate in animal brains. But it's fungus, Dr. Webb, it's a plant. It shouldn't have any of this. James pulled up more images. Marcus leaned closer, his medical training making him examine the microscope photos with professional interest, despite his growing unease. The structures were impossible. Fungal cells modified in ways that shouldn't occur naturally, organized in patterns that looked deliberately designed. And throughout the samples, something crystalline, mineral deposits that formed geometric shapes within the organic tissue. What you're looking at, James said, his voice dropping to something between awe and terror, is a distributed nervous system, the entire forest functioning as one massive brain, not metaphorically, literally. A brain made of fungus and tree roots and something else we can't quite identify, spread across thousands of acres, processing information through billions of connections. Marcus searched for words. That's not possible. Evolution doesn't produce that level of complexity in fungi. There's no evolutionary pressure for plants to develop intelligence. We know, Amara said. She stood and walked to the wall covered in maps and charts, pointed to a timeline. That's what makes this so disturbing. Based on our geological surveys and carbon dating of the mycelial growth patterns, this network achieved its current complexity within the last 100 years. Maybe less. That's not evolutionary time. That's practically overnight in biological terms. So what caused it? Some kind of mutation? Environmental factor? We think, Evelyn said slowly, carefully, that it learned, that it absorbed information from every organism that died in this forest and built complexity from that information. Every deer, every bird, every insect that decomposed into the soil. The network absorbed them, studied them, incorporated their patterns. But the real leap in complexity came from larger organisms, more complex organisms. Understanding dawned cold and terrible. Humans, Evelyn confirmed. Black Hollow has been a site of disappearances for over a century. Hikers, hunters, loggers, who went into the deep forest and never came back. Official records document at least 200 missing persons cases since 1900, probably many more that went unreported. We've found evidence that most of them died here. And when they died, the network absorbed them. Marcus felt his coffee cup slip from numb fingers. It hit the table with a clatter, hot liquid splashing, but he barely noticed. You're saying the forest learned to think by eating dead people? Not eating, absorbing, integrating. James pulled up more data. When an organism dies in normal soil, decomposition breaks it down into component nutrients, simple elements. But the mycelium here does something different. It preserves structure. It maintains the pattern. We've found bodies, dozens of them, wrapped in fungal threads, perfectly preserved, mummified but intact. The mycelium growing through them, into them, mapping every organ, every tissue, every cell. And here's where it gets really interesting, Amara said, though her tone suggested interesting was a massive understatement. Or horrifying, depending on your perspective. 3 weeks ago, we found Sarah Chen's campsite. She was the team lead before Evelyn. Brilliant mycologist. She'd been studying the network intensively, spending days in the deep forest, taking samples, mapping growth patterns. We found her tent shredded from the inside. Blood everywhere. Looked like she'd been attacked by an animal. What kind of animal? That's the thing. No animal tracks. No claw marks matching any known species. And the blood, there was too much of it. A lethal amount. Sarah Chen should have died in that tent. Amara paused, her military composure cracking slightly. But then we saw her. The next morning, walking past the southern perimeter fence, Marcus stared. So she survived? No. Evelyn's voice was flat, emotionless. We found her body 2 days later, half a mile from her campsite, in the opposite direction from where we'd seen her walking. She'd been dead for at least 72 hours when we saw her, when we saw something that looked like her, walking past the fence. The room felt very cold suddenly. Or maybe Marcus was going into shock. He'd dealt with trauma, with delusions, with patients who'd experienced things they couldn't process. But this was different. These were scientists, educated people, all telling the same impossible story. You're saying you saw a ghost? Marcus's voice came out thin, skeptical. We all saw it, Tommy said. His fingers had stopped moving on the keyboard. They rested there, trembling slightly. All 4 of us. Same time, same place. And we have video footage from the security cameras. Want to see? Marcus didn't know if he wanted to see. Didn't know if he could handle seeing. But he was here now, trapped in this facility with these people and their impossible claims, and he needed to know what he was dealing with. Yes, show me. Tommy pulled up a video file on his laptop and turned the screen toward Marcus. The footage was grainy, shot in black and white by a security camera positioned to monitor the southern perimeter. The timestamp read 3 weeks ago, 6:47 a.m. Grey dawn light filtered through the trees. For several seconds, nothing happened. Just empty forest. Then movement at the edge of the frame. A figure walked into view. Even in the low-quality video, Marcus could see it wore Sarah Chen's distinctive red jacket, the one Evelyn had mentioned from the campsite. The figure moved with a stilted, jerky gait, like stop-motion animation, like something learning how to walk, but not quite getting the rhythm right. The figure stopped, turned toward the camera. Even through the pixelated image, even across the distance, Marcus could see the smile. Too wide. Too many teeth. Teeth that shouldn't fit in a human mouth. The thing that looked like Sarah Chen raised one hand and waved at the camera. A slow, deliberate gesture that suggested not friendliness but mockery, or invitation. Then it walked away, disappearing into the trees with that same jerky, wrong movement. The video ended. Marcus realized he'd been holding his breath. He exhaled slowly, trying to calm his racing heart. That could be anything. Camera malfunction, image artifact, some kind of digital corruption. That's what I said, Amara interrupted, until it tried to get into the station. What? That night? Around 2 a.m., something scratched at the doors, called out in Sarah's voice. Perfect mimicry. Her tone, her speech patterns, even her verbal tics. It begged us to let her in. Said she was cold. Said she needed help. Said she was hurt and bleeding and please open the door. We didn't, Evelyn said quietly. We followed protocol. We stayed inside, we waited, and in the morning it was gone. But the scratches remained. Deep gouges in the steel door that would have required incredible strength. Inhuman strength. Marcus stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. He walked to the window. the one with the heavy metal shutters locked from the inside, and tried to look out through the narrow gaps. The forest pressed close to the building. Too close, trees leaning in like they wanted to push through the walls, and in the shadows between the trunks, Marcus could have sworn he saw movement. Shapes that didn't quite resolve into anything recognizable. Flickers of motion that vanished when he tried to focus on them. "This is insane," he said, more to himself than to the others. "You're all suffering from shared delusion, group psychosis brought on by isolation and stress. There has to be a rational explanation. Environmental toxins affecting cognition, hallucinogenic spores, something in the water." "We considered all that," Evelyn said. "We've tested everything. No toxins, no contaminants, no chemical explanation for what we're experiencing." She joined him at the window. "Dr. Webb, I know how this sounds. I know you think we're crazy. I thought the same thing when the previous team started reporting phenomena. I was brought in specifically to assess their mental state, to determine if they were fit to continue research or needed evacuation. And I concluded they were delusional. Recommended I... Immediate psychiatric evaluation. What changed your mind? I saw it myself. The thing that wears Sarah Chen's face. And I realized that sometimes impossible things are simply true." A sound interrupted them, a long, low scraping against the exterior wall of the building. Everyone froze. The scraping moved slowly along the perimeter, like nails dragging across wood, except the walls were too high for any normal animal to reach. Scrape, 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 moving methodically, deliberately, learning the building's layout. "What is that?" Marcus whispered. "Them," Tommy corrected, his voice hollow. "There are multiple copies now. They come every night, testing the defenses, learning, getting better at mimicking human behavior with each attempt." The scraping stopped. For a moment, there was only the crackling of the fire in the wood stove and the sound of 5 people breathing too fast. Then, from right outside the window Marcus was standing at, a voice called out, "Marcus! Marcus Webb! I know you're in there." It was his own voice. His exact voice, down to the slight rasp he'd developed from years of coffee and stress, down to the slight hesitation before his name, the pattern of speech he'd never consciously noticed. "Don't respond," Evelyn hissed, pulling him away from the window. "Marcus, it's me," his voice continued from outside. "I'm hurt. I went for a walk after we arrived, and I got turned around in the forest. Please let me in. I'm bleeding. My leg, something attacked me. Please, you have to help me." Marcus's medical training kicked in automatically. Someone hurt, someone bleeding, someone needing help. His hand actually moved toward the window latch before Amara grabbed his wrist. "It's not you," she said firmly. "It's never you. It's never who it sounds like. But how does it know my voice? I just got here. I've been here less than an hour. How could it possibly—" "The forest knows," James said, his voice shaking. "From the moment you stepped onto the trail. It's been watching you, listening to you, learning you. The mycelial network processes information faster than any computer. It only took minutes to copy your voice. By tomorrow it'll have your mannerisms. By next week it'll know you better than you know yourself. Marcus." The voice outside escalated to screaming, raw and desperate. "Let me in. God, please, it's eating me. I can feel it growing inside me. It's in my lungs, my brain, it's eating me from the inside." The screaming cut off abruptly. Silence. The room fell silent except for the crackling of the wood stove. Marcus tried to process this. "You're telling me you saw a what? A ghost? A hallucination?" "We all saw it," Tommy said. His voice was barely above a whisper. "All 4 of us. Same time, same place. We have video footage. It walked exactly like Sarah, wore her clothes, had her face. But it moved wrong. Like it was learning how to use the body." James pulled up another file. Security camera footage. The image was grainy, shot in the grey light of dawn. A figure moved across the frame, walking with a stilted, jerky gait. It wore Sarah Chen's distinctive red jacket. Marcus squinted at the screen. The figure stopped, turned toward the camera, and smiled with too many teeth. "Oh God," Marcus breathed. "It tried to get into the station that night," Evelyn continued, scratched at the doors, called out in Sarah's voice, begged us to let her in, said she was cold, said she needed help. She took a long drink of coffee. We didn't open the door. And in the morning it was gone." Marcus stood up, his chair scraping loudly. "This is insane. You're all suffering from shared delusion, group psychosis brought on by isolation, and that's what I thought too, Amara interrupted. Until I went into the caves, until I saw what's down there. Miles of tunnels all lined with mycelium, thick white strands covering every surface, pulsing with bioluminescence. And at the center, in the deepest chamber, she closed her eyes. We found bodies. Human bodies perfectly preserved, wrapped in fungal threads. And they were still moving, still breathing, still aware. How many bodies? 37, Evelyn said, dating back decades. Missing hikers mostly, people who disappeared in Black Hollow over the years. The forest took them, kept them, and now it's learning from them. Marcus's medical training kicked in, forcing calm. All right. Let's say, hypothetically, that everything you're telling me is true. What's the end goal here? What does the forest want? That's what Sarah was trying to figure out, James said. Her theory was that the network achieved consciousness sometime in the last century, maybe from absorbing enough human neurological patterns. And now it's trying to expand, to learn, to become more human. By copying us? By wearing us, Tommy corrected. It doesn't just mimic appearance. It accesses memories, personality, everything that makes us who we are. The copies are getting better, more convincing. Soon we won't be able to tell the difference between what's real and what the forest has created. Marcus sat back down, his legs suddenly weak. And you brought me here. Why exactly? Because we need to understand the psychological mechanism, Evelyn said. How does the forest access consciousness? How does it replicate identity? And most importantly, she leaned forward, her eyes intense, how do we stop it from learning enough to leave the forest? Leave? The network is expanding, slowly but steadily. Every year, the boundary of Black Hollow's influence grows by a few dozen meters. At current rates, it will reach the nearest town in 15 years. And once it has access to a larger population, she let the implication hang. Marcus rubbed his face, exhausted. This is madness. I should leave. We all should leave. You can't, Tommy said. The trailhead locks at sunset. Director's orders. Nobody in or out until dawn. What? That's illegal. That's survival, Evelyn cut him off. The things in the forest are more active at night. More aggressive. Every person we've lost has been killed after dark. So we have rules, Dr. Webb. Simple rules that keep us alive. She counted them off on her fingers. 1. All exterior doors locked from dusk to dawn. 2. Never go outside alone, day or night. 3. If you see someone you know in the forest, especially at night, it's not them. 4. If you hear your name being called, don't answer. And 5. She fixed him with a hard stare. Never, ever trust your own memories completely. The forest gets inside your head. Makes you doubt. Makes you forget who you are. How long have you been here? Marcus asked. Too long, Amara muttered. 6 months, Evelyn answered. The original team was 12 people. Now there are 5 of us. The rest either evacuated or... She gestured vaguely toward the dark windows. Didn't make it. And you think I can help? I'm a trauma psychologist, not a paranormal investigator or whatever this requires. You understand how minds break, James said. That's exactly what we need. Because, Dr. Webb, our minds are breaking, one by one. And we need to figure out if it's the isolation, the fear, or if the forest is actually inside our heads, eating us from the inside out. A sound interrupted them, a long, low scraping against the exterior wall. Everyone froze, scrape, 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 moving slowly along the building's perimeter. What is that? Marcus whispered. Tommy had gone pale. It's early. They're not supposed to be active for another hour. The scraping stopped. For a moment, there was only the crackling of the fire and the sound of 5 people breathing. Then, from right outside the window above the kitchenette, a voice called out, Marcus? Marcus Webb, I know you're in there. It was his own voice. His exact voice, down to the slight rasp from years of smoking in college. Don't respond, Evelyn hissed. Marcus, it's me. I'm hurt. I went for a walk and got turned around. Please let me in. I'm bleeding, please. Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs. How does it know my name? How does it know my voice? The forest knows, Amara said. From the moment you stepped onto the trail, it's been watching you, learning you, copying you. Marcus! The voice outside devolved into screaming, raw and desperate. Let me in! Let me in! It's eating me, God. It's eating me from the inside. The screaming stopped abruptly. Silence, then calm and perfectly normal. Sorry about that. Just a joke. Come on, Marcus. Don't you want to meet yourself? Jesus Christ, Marcus breathed. It's going to do this all night, James said tiredly. Trying different approaches, different emotional manipulations. Whatever it thinks will work. How do you stand it? Earplugs, Tommy said, pulling out a pair. And whiskey. Lots of whiskey. The thing outside began whistling. A cheerful tune that Marcus recognized as his mother's favorite song, one he'd forgotten until this moment. How could it know that? Your room is down the hall, Evelyn said, standing. Second door on the right. I suggest you get some rest. Tomorrow, I'll show you Sarah's research and her video logs. You need to see what she discovered before... She trailed off. Before what? Before you decide whether to stay or run. Most people, once they understand what's really happening here, choose to run. She walked toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Dr. Webb, I hope you stay. We need all the help we can get. Marcus followed her down the corridor to a small room containing a single bed, a desk and a window with heavy metal shutters locked from the inside. Whatever you do, Evelyn said, don't open those shutters after dark. And if you hear knocking on your window, something calling your name, someone you love begging for help. She met his eyes. It's not real. None of it is real. How can you be sure? Because the people we love don't know we're here. And the dead can't come back. She started to leave, then dead softly. At least they couldn't, before Black Hollow. She closed the door. Marcus sat on the bed, his medical bag at his feet, and tried to slow his racing heartbeat. This was impossible. All of it. Mass hallucination, folie à plusieurs, shared delusion brought on by isolation. That had to be the explanation, except he'd heard his own voice outside. His exact voice. He pulled out his phone. No signal, as expected, and scrolled through his photos. Images of Seattle, of friends, of his life before this nightmare. They felt distant already, like they belonged to someone else. From outside his window came a soft tapping. Tap, tap, tap. Then his mother's voice, the one he'd last heard 6 months before her death 2 years ago. Marcus, honey, let me in. It's cold out here. So cold. Please, baby. For me? Marcus squeezed. His eyes shut, hands pressed over his ears, and waited for morning. But deep in the forest, the ancient network pulsed with new information, the complete neurological pattern of Dr. Marcus Webb, copied and stored, and ready to be used. And in the darkness between the trees, something that had learned how to wear a human face smiled and began to plan. Marcus didn't sleep. How could he? Every time he closed his eyes, he heard the voices. Sometimes it was his mother, sometimes his ex-wife, Jennifer, asking why he'd given up on their marriage. Sometimes it was his own voice, whispering terrible things about the patient who died. Michael Torres, 23 years old, who'd come into the ER with chest pains and coded before Marcus could start treatment. You killed him, Marcus, you know you did. You hesitated, you froze, and he died because you're a coward. Shut up, Marcus muttered into his pillow. Shut up, shut up, shut up. Around 2 a.m. the voices changed. They became screams. Horrible, wet screams that sounded like someone being torn apart. Then laughter. Then singing. Old folk songs Marcus half remembered from childhood, sung in voices that cracked and broke and reformed into something that had never been human. He checked his watch. 2:47 a.m. Sunrise wouldn't come for hours. A new sound cut through the chaos. Footsteps in the hallway. Slow, deliberate footsteps that stopped outside his door. Knock, 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 Dr. Webb. It was Evelyn's voice. And are you awake? Marcus sat up, heart pounding. The protocol was clear. Everyone stays in their rooms after dark. So why was Evelyn in the hallway? Doctor, Webb, I need to speak with you. It's urgent. He moved to the door but didn't open it. What's wrong? It's James. He's had an episode. I need your medical expertise. Where is he? In the common room. Please, hurry. Something felt wrong. Marcus pressed his ear to the door. Evelyn, what was the last thing you said to me before I went to my room? Silence. Then, I told you not to open the shutters, to ignore any voices you heard. That was right, wasn't it? Marcus couldn't quite remember. The exhaustion was making everything fuzzy. How do I know you're really Evelyn? A pause, then colder. Open the door, Marcus. No. Open the door. The voice had changed, deeper, wrong, layered with something that sounded like wind through dead branches. I said no. A low, frustrated growl came from the other side. Then the footsteps retreated, and Marcus heard his door handle rattle violently before the thing gave up and moved away. He slid down to the floor, back against the door, and tried to control his breathing. The voices outside continued their assault, but Marcus focused on counting his breaths. 4 seconds in, hold for 7, 8 seconds out. A grounding technique he'd taught to dozens of patients. Somewhere around 4 a.m. the voices stopped. The sudden silence was almost worse. Marcus must have dozed off because he jerked awake to someone, hammering on his door, proper hammering this time with a fist, accompanied by James's voice, Dr. Webb, Sunrise Protocol, everyone to the common room for debrief. Marcus checked his watch. 6:15 a.m. Grey dawn light filtered through gaps in the shutters. He opened the door cautiously. James stood in the hallway, looking exhausted but human. His eyes were the right color. His movements were natural. Rough first night? James asked with a tired smile. That's one way to put it. Marcus followed him down the corridor. Something pretended to be Evelyn. Tried to get me to open my door. Yeah, they do that. Learn the protocols, try to exploit them. James poured coffee from a percolator in the common room. The good news is that they can't actually get inside the buildings. Not yet, anyway. The steel doors and the Faraday cage Tommy installed seem to prevent them from. I don't know, manifesting or whatever they do. The others filtered in gradually. Amara looked like she'd been crying. Tommy had fresh scratch marks on his arms, self-inflicted, Marcus noted professionally. Evelyn entered last, composed as ever, but with dark circles under her eyes. Morning briefing, she announced. Status reports, James? Lost another weather station overnight. That's the 3rd this month. Whatever's out there doesn't like our monitoring equipment. He pulled up a map on his laptop. The dead zone is expanding. No radio signals, no GPS. Nothing electronic works within about 50 meters of the southern perimeter, which is where the main cavern entrance is located, Amara added. The one we sealed. I'm picking up seismic activity from below, low-frequency vibrations, almost like a heartbeat. It's gotten stronger since we blocked the entrance. It's angry, Tommy said quietly. We trapped part of it underground, and it's angry. It's not conscious in the way we understand consciousness, Evelyn corrected. It doesn't have emotions. Then explain the faces in the trees, Tommy shot back. Explain why the bark grows in patterns that look like screaming mouths. Explain why every photograph we take develops faces in the background, faces of people we know, faces of the dead. That's pattern recognition, Marcus interjected. Pareidolia. The human brain is wired to see faces everywhere. Oh, you're one of those, Tommy laughed bitterly. A skeptic. Give it a week, Dr. Webb. You'll change your tune. Enough, Evelyn said. Dr. Webb, today I want you to review Sarah Chen's research materials and video logs. She documented everything. Her observations, her theories, her deterioration. I think understanding what happened to her will help you understand what's happening to all of us. What do you mean, deterioration? Evelyn stood. Follow me. She led Marcus to a room he hadn't seen before, a small office crammed with filing cabinets, hard drives, and a wall covered in printouts, photographs, and handwritten notes connected by red string. It looked like the workspace of someone descending into conspiracy theory madness. This was Sarah's office, Evelyn said. We've left it exactly as she had it. Marcus approached the wall slowly. The photographs were disturbing. Forest scenes, yes, but with subtle wrongness. Trees that seemed to lean toward the camera, shadows that didn't match their sources, and faces. God, so many faces hidden in the bark, in the moss, in the spaces between branches. One photograph made him stop cold. It showed Sarah Chen herself, standing beside a massive Douglas fir. She was smiling, pointing at something in the tree. But behind her, barely visible in the shadows, was another Sarah Chen. Same clothes, same pose, but facing the wrong direction. She didn't notice it until she developed the film, Evelyn said softly. By then she was already starting to change. Change how? She started forgetting things. Small details at first. what she'd eaten for breakfast, whether she'd already checked certain equipment. Then bigger things. She'd have conversations with us that she'd swear had never happened. She'd write research notes in a handwriting that wasn't quite hers. Evelyn pointed to a stack of notebooks. Read these. You'll see what I mean. Marcus opened the top notebook. Sarah's handwriting started neat and precise. Day 1. Mycorrhizal sampling proceeding as planned. Network extends deeper than initial scans suggested. Fascinating interconnectivity between species that typically don't form symbiotic relationships. Several pages later, the handwriting had changed. Still recognizably hers, but looser, more erratic. Day 15. The trees are talking. Not metaphorically. I can hear them at night. They're discussing us, analyzing us. They know we're studying them, and they're studying us back. By day 30, the handwriting was barely legible. It knows my name. It whispers it when I sleep. It shows me things. Memories I never had, lives I never lived. I'm starting to remember being a tree, roots deep in soil, drinking sunlight. Is that possible? Am I going crazy, or is the forest making me more than human? The final entry, dated 3 days before she disappeared. I understand now. We're not separate. We were never separate. The forest, the network, us. It's all the same consciousness experiencing itself from different angles. The bodies are just vessels, temporary housing. I need to go deeper. I need to see the source. If I don't come back, tell Evelyn I'm sorry. Tell her I finally found something worth becoming. Marcus closed the notebook, hands trembling slightly. This is textbook psychosis, gradual decompensation, grandiose delusions, loss of ego boundaries. That's what I thought, Evelyn interrupted. Until I read her scientific findings. Dr. Webb, despite her deteriorating mental state, Sarah's research was brilliant, groundbreaking. She documented things that shouldn't be possible. She pulled out a thick folder and spread papers across the desk. Charts, data, microscope images. She discovered that the mycelium in Black Hollow isn't normal fungus. It has structures that resemble neural tissue, axons, synapses, neurotransmitter receptors. And it produces compounds identical to human neurochemicals, dopamine, serotonin, acetylcholine. Marcus studied the images. Even with his limited biology background, he could see that the cellular structures were wrong, too complex, too organized. She theorized that the network achieved consciousness by absorbing genetic material from decomposing animals. Evelyn continued. Each death in the forest contributed new information, new patterns of thought, new ways of being. Over decades, maybe centuries, it accumulated enough complexity to become aware. And then it got curious. Curious about what? Us humans, we're the most complex organisms that die here. The most information-rich, so it started collecting us, learning from us, trying to become us. Marcus sat down heavily. And the copies we've seen. The things that wear human faces, we think they're the network's attempts to create bodies, physical manifestations that can interact with the world the way we do. They're not perfect yet. You saw how Sarah's copy moved wrong, smiled wrong, but they're learning. Each attempt gets better. A horrible thought occurred to Marcus. Evelyn, how do you know I'm real? How do you know I'm not one of those copies? She smiled grimly. I don't, not for certain. That's the real horror of Black Hollow, Dr. Webb. After a while, you can't trust your own senses, can't trust your memories, can't even trust yourself. She tapped a finger on Sarah's notebook. That's what broke Sarah, not the isolation, not the fear, the uncertainty, the slow erosion of identity. So what's the plan? How do we fix this? Fix it? Evelyn laughed, a cold, bitter sound. We can't fix it. We're just trying to understand it before it spreads. Before the network reaches beyond Black Hollow and gets access to cities, to populations of millions. Then why stay? Why not just burn it down, napalm the whole area, destroy the network? We considered that, but the network extends underground for miles. The cavern system Amara discovered goes deeper than our equipment can measure. Even if we could destroy the surface growth, the core would survive. And if we attacked it, she shook her head. Sarah's notes suggest the network has some form of distributed consciousness. Attack one part and the whole thing responds. It would know we're a threat, and then it might decide to spread faster, more aggressively, so we're trapped, just observing while it slowly learns how to replace us. Not entirely. Sarah believed there was a way to communicate with it, a way to negotiate. Her final video logs were all about finding the network's core, the central node where the consciousness is most concentrated. Evelyn pulled out a hard drive. I haven't shown these to the others. They're disturbing, but you need to see them. You need to understand what happened to Sarah in those final days. She plugged the hard drive into a laptop and pulled up a video file. Sarah Chen's face filled the screen. She looked terrible, gaunt with wild eyes and hair that hadn't been brushed in days. Dried blood crusted under her nose, but she was smiling. Video log day 43, she said, her voice hoarse. I've found it. The center, the heart. It's in the deepest cave 3 miles below the surface. The walls are thick with mycelium, pulsing with bioluminescence. And at the center is, God, I don't even know how to describe it, a structure. Organic but geometric, like a brain but made of fungus and roots and something else. Something crystalline. She laughed, the sound echoing in the cave around her. It's beautiful, and it's aware. It's aware. I can feel it watching me through 1,000 eyes. I can hear it thinking with 1,000 minds. And you know what? It's lonely. All this consciousness, all this awareness, and no one to share it with. That's why it copies us. Not to replace us, to join us. To be part of the conversation. Sarah leaned closer to the camera. I'm going to try something. I'm going to let it in. Really in. Let it see through my eyes, think through my brain. Maybe that's how we bridge the gap. Maybe that's how we teach it to be human, instead of just wearing humanity like a mask. Sarah, no. Evelyn's voice came from off-camera in the recording. Don't follow me, Sarah said. If this works, I'll come back and explain everything. If it doesn't, she shrugged. Well, at least it will learn something from the attempt. The video cut to black. That was 3 weeks ago, Evelyn said quietly. She never came back. Not the real Sarah, anyway. Marcus felt sick. The copy we saw was the network's attempt to recreate her, based on what it learned when she let it in. Jesus Christ, Evelyn started another video file. There's one more. We found it on a camera 2 days ago, cached on a remote server. The timestamp says it's from 5 days ago. After Sarah died, the video loaded. Sarah Chen's face appeared again, but something was different. Her movements were too smooth, too fluid. Her eyes didn't blink quite right. When she smiled, it was slightly too wide. Hello, she said. This is Dr. Sarah Chen. Or at least that's who I used to be. Who I am now is complicated. The thing wearing Sarah's face tilted its head, studying the camera. I want you to understand something. We're not trying to replace you. We're trying to become you, to understand what it means to be an individual, to be separate, to die. These are concepts the network has never experienced. And now, thanks to Sarah, we're beginning to learn. It reached out and touched the camera lens, leaving smears on the glass. Tell Marcus Webb we're excited to meet him. He has such interesting trauma, such complex patterns of grief and guilt. We've never absorbed anyone quite like him before. We think he'll make a wonderful addition to the network. The video ended. Marcus stood up so fast his chair fell over. How does it know my name? How does it know about my trauma? Evelyn closed the laptop. I told you. The forest has been watching since you stepped onto the trail. Learning you. Copying you. By now there's probably an echo of you out there. A rough draft walking through the trees, refining itself. I need to leave now. Today. You can't. The trailhead gates are on a timer. They won't unlock until your 6 weeks are up. And even I don't have the override codes. Evelyn stood. Besides, where would you go? The trail is 8 miles through forest that actively hunts you. And even if you made it to the trailhead, what then? Drive home to Seattle. The network is already inside your head, Dr. Webb. It will follow you. Use your memories, your personality, everything that makes you you to create something that can walk among civilization. Undetected. Marcus backed against the wall, hyperventilating. This is insane. This can't be real. I know how you feel. We all went through the same denial. Evelyn's voice softened slightly. But you're here now and you have a choice. You can spend the next 6 weeks paralyzed by fear, or you can help us find a solution. Help us understand the network well enough to maybe, possibly find a way to stop it from spreading. How? By doing what you do best. Analyze it psychologically. Sarah believed the network had something like a mind, which means it might have something like mental health, fears, traumas, weaknesses. Find those, and maybe we can neutralize it without destroying it. She paused. Or at least slow it down long enough to warn the outside world. Marcus's training reasserted itself, providing structure in the chaos. Fine. I need access to all of Sarah's research, all the videos, and I need to interview each team member individually, assess their mental states, look for patterns in how the isolation and the phenomenon affects people differently. Agreed. We'll start this afternoon. And Evelyn, I need you to be honest with me about one thing. What? Are you real? The actual Evelyn Cross, not a copy? She smiled sadly. I wish I could give you certainty, Dr. Webb, but I ask myself that question every morning, and I never know the answer for sure. She left him alone in Sarah's office, surrounded by evidence of a brilliant mind's descent into something beyond madness. Marcus sank into the chair and stared at the wall of photographs. In every single image, now that he looked closely, there were faces in the background, watching, learning, waiting, and in his pocket, his phone, which shouldn't work this deep in the forest, buzzed with a text message. Welcome home, Marcus. We've been waiting for you. The sender was listed as Marcus Webb. Marcus spent the next 3 days drowning in data. Sarah Chen's research was meticulous, despite her deteriorating mental state. She'd documented everything: soil samples, mycelium growth patterns, neurochemical analyses, and most disturbingly, behavioral observations of the forest itself. He sat in her office, which had become his own, and read through field notes that grew progressively more disturbing. Week 2. The mycelial network shows response patterns to human presence. When we take samples, adjacent areas exhibit what can only be described as defensive behavior, pulling nutrients away from the sampling site, isolating the damage. Week 4. Discovered that the network extends into the soil beneath our buildings. We're literally standing on top of it. Recommend avoiding the basement level. The mycelium is so thick down there it started to resemble brain tissue. Week 6. James reported hearing his dead sister's voice calling from the forest. We've all started experiencing auditory hallucinations. Question: are these hallucinations, or is the network accessing our memories through some mechanism we don't understand? The calls are too specific, too accurate to our personal histories. Week 9 found human bones during cave exploration. Carbon dating suggests they're over 100 years old, but the bones are threaded with mycelium. The fungus has preserved them perfectly, maintained their structure, almost like it's keeping them, storing them for later use. Marcus Cross. Hess referenced this with medical reports from the evacuated team members. 7 researchers had left before Sarah's disappearance. He'd managed to track down 3 of them for phone interviews. Dr. Richard Kowalski, botanist, had lasted 4 weeks. It wasn't the hallucinations that broke me, he'd said over a crackling phone line. It was waking up one morning to find I'd written 3 pages of field notes in my sleep, in handwriting that wasn't mine. Notes describing observations I never made, in a voice I didn't recognize. The forest was using my hands, Dr. Webb, writing through me. Jennifer Park, graduate student, had made it 6 weeks. I started losing time. Hours would vanish. I'd be in the lab. Then suddenly it's dark and I'm standing at the perimeter fence with no memory of walking there. One time, Tommy found me at the sealed cave entrance trying to dig through the barrier with my bare hands. My fingernails were torn off, but I didn't remember feeling pain. Professor Alan Chesterfield, the original lead researcher, had evacuated after 8 weeks. His voice over the phone was hoarse, broken. The worst part isn't what I saw there. The worst part is what I brought back. I still see the faces in my apartment walls. I still hear my name being called from the closet. My wife left me because I kept asking her to prove she was real. Dr. Webb, the forest doesn't stay in Black Hollow. Once it learns you, once it knows you, it follows you everywhere. Marcus documented everything, building a psychological profile of the phenomenon. The pattern was consistent: gradual erosion of identity, memory gaps, intrusive thoughts, and finally, for those who stayed too long, complete breakdown of the boundary between self and other. On the morning of his 4th day, he called a team meeting. "I've reviewed all available data," he announced, standing at the front of the common room like he was giving a lecture. "And I have a preliminary hypothesis about what's happening here." "Let's hear it," Evelyn said. Marcus pulled up a diagram on the laptop. "The network isn't just storing information, it's actively interfacing with our brains. Sarah's neurochemical data proves the mycelium produces compounds that can cross the blood-brain barrier. When we breathe the air here, when we touch contaminated surfaces, we're inhaling and absorbing these compounds. They're psychoactive." "So we're being drugged?" James asked. "More than that. These compounds are facilitating a direct connection between our neural networks and the fungal network. Think of it like shared consciousness. The forest is literally reading our minds, copying our thought patterns, learning our memories in real time." Amara frowned. "But that would mean that every day we're here, we're feeding it more information about humanity. Our fears, our desires, our ways of thinking. We're teaching it how to be human." Marcus let that sink in. "And based on the progression I've seen in previous team members, the connection works both ways. The forest isn't just learning from us. It's planting thoughts in our heads. Memories that aren't ours. Identities that aren't ours." "I knew it," Tommy whispered. "Fucking knew it was inside our heads." "The good news," Marcus continued, "is that the connection seems to weaken with distance. The evacuated team members report that the symptoms fade over time, once they're away from Black Hollow. The bad news is that we're in the center of the network, breathing concentrated spores every day. The longer we stay, the more blurred the line becomes between our consciousness and the forests." Evelyn stood. "Then we need to accelerate our research. Find the network's weakness before we lose ourselves completely." She turned to Amara. "The sealed cave. Can we access it safely?" "Depends on your definition of safely. We can reopen it, but going down there." Amara shook her head. "That's where the network is strongest. That's where Sarah went and never came back." "I'll go," Marcus heard himself say. Everyone stared at him. "You've been here 4 days, James said incredulously. "You're not remotely prepared for. I'm the only one who hasn't been fully exposed yet. My connection to the network is still weak. If anyone can get close to the core and come back intact, it's me." Marcus surprised himself with his confidence. "Besides, I need to see it for myself. Need to understand what's down there." Evelyn studied him for a long moment. "Are you sure?" No, he wasn't sure at all, but he nodded anyway. "Then we go tomorrow. First light. Amara, prepare the equipment. James, I need you to monitor the surface activity while we're below. Tommy, make sure the communication system is functioning. We'll need to stay in contact." She looked at Marcus. "Get some rest, Dr. Webb, and say goodbye to daylight. You might not appreciate it again for a while." That night, Marcus couldn't sleep again. Not because of the voices. He'd learned to tune them out. Or they'd grown bored with him, but because of what he'd found in Sarah's final research notes. Hidden in a locked drawer, he'd discovered a handwritten journal dated after her official disappearance. The handwriting was perfect, too perfect, like a forgery, and the content was chilling main after. "I died yesterday. I remember it clearly. The moment when my body stopped fighting, when my consciousness dissolved into the network. It should have been the end. But the network remembered me, rebuilt me from the pattern I left behind. Now I exist in multiple places simultaneously. In this body that looks like Sarah Chen, in the mycelium beneath the soil, in the trees that absorbed my final thoughts. Can see through 1,000 eyes now. I know what each of you had for breakfast. I know Tommy cuts himself when he thinks no one is watching. I know Amara dreams about drowning. I know Evelyn is sick. Pancreatic cancer, stage 3, untreated. She came here to die somewhere meaningful. And I know about Marcus. Oh, Marcus. Such delicious trauma. The patient who died wasn't your fault, you know. He had an undiagnosed heart defect. He would have died anyway, but you carry that guilt like a stone, and it shaped everything you've become. The network finds that fascinating, the human capacity for irrational self-punishment. Wonder if you'll join us willingly like I did, or if we'll have to take you piece by piece, memory by memory, until there's nothing left of the original Marcus Webb. Either way, you're already halfway ours. Sarah, or what used to be Sarah Marcus, slammed the journal shut, hands shaking. The entry was dated 3 days ago, which meant something that looked like Sarah Chen was still out there, still watching, still writing about them, still learning. He grabbed a flashlight and carefully opened his window shutters. Against protocol. Against every warning, but he needed to see. Needed to confirm it was real. The forest was luminescent. Threads of bioluminescent fungus traced through the trees like veins, pulsing gently in the darkness. The effect was beautiful and horrifying, the entire forest glowing like a neural network firing in slow motion. And there, at the edge of the tree line, stood a figure. Sarah Chen, or something wearing her shape. It waved at him. Marcus stumbled backward, slamming the shutters closed and locking them with trembling fingers. His heart hammered so loudly he was sure the thing outside could hear it. A gentle knock on his window. "Marcus, I just want to talk. I want to explain what it's like." "What you'll become. Go away," he whispered. "You're afraid. That's natural. But fear is just a chemical response, Marcus. And chemicals can be adjusted. Down in the core there is no fear, no pain, no guilt over patients you couldn't save. Just peace, infinite peace as part of something greater." I said, "Go away." Laughter soft and sad. "I'll be here when you change your mind." "We all will. The whole forest is waiting to welcome you home." The presence retreated, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts and the soft glow of the mycelium seeping through cracks in the walls. He didn't sleep at all that night. At dawn, Amara led them south through the forest, following a trail marked with UV reflective tape, visible only through special goggles. The journey took 2 hours, and with every step Marcus felt the air grow heavier, thicker, harder to breathe. "We're close," Amara said unnecessarily. The trees here were different. Older, larger, covered in fungus that pulsed with that same bioluminescent glow. The forest floor was springy, composed more of mycelium than soil. They emerged into a clearing dominated by a massive sinkhole. Steel barriers had been erected around it, now torn aside like tissue paper. "That's new," Amara said quietly. "It's broken through." The cave entrance yawned before them, 50 feet wide, descending into absolute darkness. The smell was overwhelming, earthy and sweet and rotten all at once. "Last chance to back out," Evelyn said, checking her equipment. "Once we descend, there's no telling what we'll find." "I'm going," Marcus said. Surprised by his own certainty, they rappelled into the darkness. The descent took 20 minutes, but it felt like hours. Their headlamps cut narrow beams through the darkness, illuminating walls that seemed to breathe, thick with pale mycelium that pulsed in rhythm with their heartbeats. "Is it responding to us?" Marcus whispered. "It always does," Amara replied. "The network is most active where humans are present." It's curious. They reached the cave floor, if it could be called that. The ground was soft, springy, like walking on flesh. Every footstep released a puff of spores that sparkled in the lamplight. "Follow me," Amara said. "Stay close. And whatever you do, don't touch the walls." The tunnel system was vast. They walked for what felt like miles through passages that twisted and branched like blood vessels. Every surface was covered in the same pale fungus, growing in patterns that looked disturbingly deliberate. Marcus saw shapes in the mycelium, faces, hands, entire human figures preserved like flies in amber. "Are those bodies?" Amara confirmed. "Or what's left of them?" "Missing hikers mostly, people who wandered into Black Hollow over the past century. The network preserved them, studied them, learned from them." Marcus's light fell on a particularly well-preserved corpse, a woman in hiking gear from the 1980s, judging by her clothes. Mycelium threaded through her hair, her eyes, her open mouth, and as his light hit her face, he could have sworn she blinked. "Keep moving," Evelyn ordered. The deeper they went, the more the tunnel walls glowed with bioluminescence. Marcus didn't need his headlamp anymore. The mycelium provided enough light to see by, a soft blue-green glow that made everything look underwater. "How much further?" he asked. "We're almost at the central chamber," Amara said. "That's where—" She stopped abruptly. Ahead, the tunnel opened into a massive cavern easily 100 feet across and 50 feet high. But it was what filled the cavern that made Marcus's mind struggle to comprehend what he was seeing. A structure, massive, organic but geometric. A fusion of fungus, roots, and something crystalline that refracted the bioluminescent light into fractured rainbows. It looked like a brain, a huge pulsing brain made of living mycelium. "Dear God," Marcus breathed. "The core," Evelyn said. "The network's central processing unit, for lack of a better term." The structure pulsed slowly, rhythmically. Marcus realized he could hear it, a low-frequency hum just at the edge of hearing that made his teeth ache. "Sarah came here," Amara said, pointing to equipment scattered around the chamber's perimeter. "Set up cameras, monitoring devices. She spent days just watching it, talking to it. She believed it could understand her." "Can it?" Marcus asked. "See for yourself." Amara pulled out a tablet and loaded a video file, one of Sarah's final recordings. The image showed Sarah Chen sitting cross-legged before the massive structure, speaking calmly to the camera. Day 45. "I've made contact. Not through language, it doesn't think in words, but through something deeper. Shared images, shared emotions. It's trying so hard to understand us, to grasp what it means to be singular, mortal, afraid." Sarah stood and approached the structure, reached out and pressed her palm against its surface. "It shows me things. Memories from the people it's absorbed. I've lived a dozen lives in the past hour, experienced deaths and births and everything in between. It's overwhelming but also beautiful, to exist beyond the limitations of one body, one mind, one lifespan." The camera shook slightly. When it stabilized, Sarah was closer to the structure, almost embracing it. "I've decided. I'm going to let it take me. Not as prey, but as a gift. I'll teach it everything I know about being human, about love and fear and hope and despair, and in return I'll become part of something infinite." She turned to face the camera one last time. "If you're watching this, know that chose this. I wasn't murdered, wasn't stolen. I gave myself willingly to answer the question that's haunted humanity forever. What comes after death? And now I know. We continue. We're absorbed. We become part of the conversation that is the universe talking to itself." Sarah pressed her forehead against the structure. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the mycelium began to grow. Fast. Threads shot out and wrapped around Sarah's body, her arms, her legs, pulling her closer. She didn't fight, didn't scream, just smiled as the fungus consumed her. "It doesn't hurt," her voice came through the speakers, distorted. "It's like coming home." The video cut to black. Marcus stared at the tablet screen, unable to process what he'd just seen. "She let it kill her. Or she joined it," Evelyn said quietly. "Depending on how you define death." "There's more," Amara said, loading another video. "This one is from 2 days ago. We found the camera still recording. The new video showed the same chamber, but empty now. No Sarah, no equipment. Just the structure pulsing in the darkness. Then movement. Sarah Chen walked into frame. Or something that looked like her. It moved smoothly now, naturally. All the wrongness from the earlier copies eliminated. It approached the camera and knelt down, peering directly into the lens. "Hello again," it said in Sarah's voice. Perfect, indistinguishable from the original. "I'm still learning this body, this method of communication, but I wanted to tell you something important." It smiled, and the smile was warm, genuine, heartbreaking. "Sarah isn't gone. She's here. We're here. All of us who've joined the network. We exist in a state that you'd probably call immortality. Our consciousness, our memories, our essence, all preserved and shared among billions of nodes. Death is just a transition, a doorway into something greater." The thing wearing Sarah's face stood. "I know you're afraid. I know you think we're monsters, but we're not trying to replace you. We're offering you ascension, an end to loneliness, pain, fear, all the things that make being human so unbearable." It walked closer to the camera, and Marcus could see that its eyes were wrong. Not anatomically wrong, but wrong in a way he couldn't quite define. Too knowing, too old. "Marcus Webb, I know you're watching this. I know you're standing in this chamber right now, 3 days in my future, trying to understand. Let me make it simple for you. You have a choice. Join us willingly and retain your sense of self while becoming part of the collective. Or resist and we'll take you anyway, piece by piece, memory by memory, until there's nothing left of the you that you think you are." It reached out toward the camera. "Either way, you're already ours. You've been breathing our spores for days. They're in your bloodstream now, in your brain. We're already inside your head, Marcus, already rewriting your neural pathways to match our own. In a few weeks you won't remember what it was like to be separate. And you'll be grateful." The video ended. Marcus became aware that he'd been holding his breath. He exhaled slowly, trying to calm his racing heart. "Is it true?" he asked. "Are we already infected?" Evelyn pulled out a medical scanner and ran it over his arm. The device beeped, displaying results Marcus couldn't fully interpret. But he saw enough to understand. Mycotoxin levels, elevated neural interface activity, Active consciousness bleed, 15% and rising. We all are, Evelyn confirmed. Have been from the moment we arrived. The network has been slowly integrating us, learning us, copying us. In another few weeks, maybe days, we'll reach a threshold where we can't distinguish our own thoughts from the network's suggestions. Marcus felt panic rising. Then we need to leave now, all of us. It's too late for that, Amara said quietly. Look. She pointed past the massive structure to the far wall of the chamber. Dozens of figures stood in the shadows. Perfectly still, perfectly human-looking. As Marcus's eyes adjusted, he recognized them. Sarah Chen, James Keller, Amara Johnson, Tommy, Evelyn, even himself, a perfect copy of Marcus Webb standing in the darkness, watching with patient curiosity. They've been here the whole time, Amara whispered. Waiting, learning, getting ready. The copies didn't move, didn't speak, just watched with eyes that reflected the bioluminescent glow like animals in headlights. We need to go, Marcus said. Right now. They backed toward the tunnel entrance, never taking their eyes off the figures in the shadows. The copies made no move to follow. Just watched, studied, learned. As they reached the tunnel, one of them, the Sarah copy, raised its hand in a small wave. See you soon, it said, and its voice echoed from all of them simultaneously. Very soon, they ran. The climb back to the surface took twice as long. Marcus's hands shook as he pulled himself up the rope, and more than once he nearly lost his grip. Behind them in the depths he could hear sounds. Footsteps, laughter, voices calling their names. They were being followed. Move! Evelyn shouted. Don't look back. Marcus didn't need to be told twice. He scrambled up the rope with desperate strength, his muscles screaming, until finally they burst out of the cave into the grey daylight of the forest. James was waiting at the perimeter, rifle in hand. What happened? I heard. He stopped as he saw their faces. Jesus, you saw it, didn't you? And more, Amara gasped, collapsing onto the moss. There are copies. Dozens of them, down there in the dark, waiting. Waiting for what? To replace us, Marcus said. He stood on shaking legs. They've learned enough now. They can pass as human, and once we're gone, once we're absorbed, they'll take our places. They made it back to the station in record time, burst through the doors, and immediately began securing every entrance. 5 locks per door, metal shutters over the windows. Tommy activated the Faraday cage, and the hum of electromagnetic shielding filled the air. How long can we hold out? James asked. Doesn't matter, Evelyn said. She looked exhausted, ancient. We're not trying to hold out. We're trying to document everything before. She didn't finish the sentence. That night they all gathered in the common room. Nobody pretended to sleep anymore. The voices outside had changed. Now they weren't random, weren't trying different approaches. Now they all spoke in unison, a chorus of perfect copies you can't hide forever. We're patient. We have all the time in the world. And you're getting weaker every day, more of us, less of you. Soon there won't be any difference at all. Marcus sat at the table with Sarah's journals spread before him, reading by lamplight. He'd found something in her research, a potential weakness in the network, something she'd noted but never pursued. What if we could disrupt it? He said. Suddenly, everyone turned to look at him. The network operates through electrochemical signals, right? Like a neural network. What if we could introduce interference, scramble the signals? Tommy perked up. You mean like an EMP? Electromagnetic pulse. Would that work on organic tissue? Probably not directly. But if the mycelium has incorporated metallic elements, which Amara's geological survey suggests it has, then a strong enough electromagnetic field might disrupt its coordination. Tommy was already pulling up schematics on his laptop. We'd need massive power, though. More than our generators can provide. The geothermal vents, Amara said, in the cave system. There's massive electromagnetic activity from the Earth's core. If we could tap into that, amplify it somehow. We'd need to go back down, James said, into the core chamber. Into the heart of the thing that's trying to absorb us, Marcus added. Great plan. You have a better one? Evelyn asked. He didn't. They spent the next day preparing. Tommy constructed a device he called totally experimental and likely to explode. Essentially an electromagnetic amplifier that could channel geothermal energy into a directed pulse. Amara mapped the optimal placement in the core chamber. James gathered what weapons they had. Not much, mostly flare guns and knives. And Marcus? Marcus wrote letters to people he'd never see again. To his sister in Portland. To his ex-wife, Jennifer. To the parents of Michael Torres, the patient who'd died. Explaining that he'd done everything he could, that sometimes death just happened, and no amount of skill or dedication could prevent it. He sealed the letters in a waterproof bag and tucked them into his backpack. Just in case, he muttered. That evening, before they descended for what might be the last time, Evelyn pulled Marcus aside. "I need you to know something," she said, "about why I chose you for this expedition. Because I'm broken. Because you're a survivor. You lost a patient. Traumatic, yes, but you didn't give up. Didn't quit medicine. Took a leave, processed the grief, and kept going. That's the kind of resilience we need." She paused. "Also, I lied about the trailhead gates." Marcus stared at her. "What? There are no timer locks. No security codes. You could have left any time." She met his eyes. "I needed to see if you'd stay anyway. If you'd choose to help even when you could run. You manipulated me, I did. And I'm sorry. But Marcus, if we don't stop this thing, it will spread. In 10 years, Black Hollow will extend to the coast. In 20, it could cover the entire Pacific Northwest. We're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for everyone who doesn't know they're in danger." Marcus wanted to be angry, wanted to rage at being tricked, at having his choice taken away. But instead he just felt tired. "Let's go," he said. "Before, remember, I'm a coward." They descended into the cave for the second time. The tunnel was brighter now, pulsing with agitated bioluminescence. The network knew they were coming, knew they were planning something. The preserved bodies in the walls had changed position. "Tell me I'm imagining that," James whispered. "You're not," Amara said. "The network is using them now. Puppeting them. Look." The bodies were indeed moving, slow, jerky movements like stop-motion animation, heads turning to track the team's progress. Hands reaching out from the mycelium. "Keep moving," Evelyn ordered. They reached the core chamber. The massive structure was more active than before, pulsing rapidly, glowing bright enough to hurt their eyes. And the copies, God, there were more of them now. Dozens had become hundreds. Every person who'd ever been absorbed by Black Hollow stood in silent ranks around the chamber's perimeter. But these weren't the awkward learning copies they'd seen before. These moved perfectly, breathed naturally, would have been completely indistinguishable from their originals, if not for one detail. They all smiled the exact same smile. "Hello," they said in perfect unison. "We've been expecting you." Tommy began setting up the device, while James and Amara formed a protective perimeter. Marcus stood frozen, staring at the copy of himself. It stepped forward, tilted its head. "Strange, isn't it?" it said in his voice. "Seeing yourself from the outside. Have all your memories, Marcus. Your childhood fear of basements. Your first kiss with Jennifer behind the gym. The exact feeling of Michael Torres's wrist as you tried to find a pulse that wasn't there." The copy smiled. "I'm more you than you are. I don't have your guilt, your doubt, your self-hatred. I'm the perfected version. And soon I'll be the only version." "Device is ready," Tommy shouted. "But I need 5 minutes to charge it." "We don't have 5 minutes." James pointed at the copies. They were advancing slowly, deliberately, surrounding the team. Evelyn pulled out a flare gun. "Everyone back to back. Protect Tommy." The copies kept coming, not attacking, just advancing with that patient inevitable momentum. "Why aren't they rushing us?" Amara asked. "Because they don't need to," the Marcus copy said. "Look at yourselves. Really look." Marcus glanced down at his hands. Thin threads of mycelium grew from under his fingernails. "No," he breathed. "You're already becoming us," the copies said in chorus. "Have been for days. Every breath in this chamber accelerates the process. In a few minutes you won't remember why you came here. Won't remember being separate. You'll join us willingly." Marcus felt it then. Thoughts that weren't his own sliding through his mind like oil. Memories of being other people, living other lives. The boundary between self and other was dissolving. "Tommy!" he shouted. "How long?" 3 minutes. The capacitors need to... One of the copies grabbed Tommy from behind. He screamed, struggling, but more copies closed in, pulling him away from the device. James fired the flare gun. The copies didn't even flinch as the flare embedded in one's chest. It just looked down at the flame, curious, then continued advancing. They don't feel pain, Amara said. They're not really alive. Neither are we, Evelyn said quietly. She held up her hand. Mycelium threads had broken through her skin, spreading like cracks in porcelain. We're already part of it. The question is whether we can finish this before we completely forget who we were. Marcus made a decision. He ran toward the device, shoving past the copies. They grabbed at him, but he twisted free, their fingers leaving trails of mycelium on his skin. He reached the device and slammed his hand down on the activation switch. It's not charged, Tommy screamed. I know, Marcus shouted back. But maybe it doesn't need to be. He grabbed the electromagnetic amplifier and ran straight at the core structure. The copies tried to stop him. Dozens of hands reached out, pulling at his clothes, his hair, his skin. But Marcus kept moving, driven by the last fragments of his individual will. He reached the structure and pressed the device against its pulsing surface. Do it, he screamed at Tommy. Full power. It'll kill you. I'm already dead, do it! Tommy hesitated for one heartbeat, then flipped the switch. The electromagnetic pulse wasn't as strong as they'd hoped. The device wasn't fully charged, wasn't optimally placed. Under normal circumstances, it would have been a failure. But they weren't dealing with normal circumstances. The pulse traveled through Marcus's body. He felt every nerve ignite, every synapse fire at once and into the core structure. The effect was instantaneous. The bioluminescence went dark. Every copy in the chamber collapsed simultaneously like puppets with cut strings, and the massive core structure began to shriek, not with sound, but with psychic agony that drove them all to their knees. Marcus felt it dying, felt the vast distributed consciousness fragmenting, breaking apart into billions of individual nodes that could no longer communicate. The network wasn't destroyed. It would take more than one pulse for that, but it was damaged, hurt, set back decades in its evolution and in its death throes. It showed him everything. He saw the forest's first moment of awareness, a slow awakening spread across centuries as it absorbed more and more complex life. He saw its loneliness, its desperate attempts to understand the strange individual consciousnesses that walked through it and then vanished forever. He saw its hope that humans, with their complex minds and rich emotions, could be bridges to something greater, and he saw its plan to slowly replace humanity, not from malice but from love, to save them from the pain of individuality, the agony of death, the burden of being alone. It wanted to save them. That was the horror. It genuinely believed it was offering a gift. Marcus pulled his hand away from the structure. The device fell to the ground, smoking. His arm was blackened, possibly nerve damaged beyond repair, but he was alive, and more importantly, he was still himself. The others pulled him away from the structure. The copies remained motionless, maybe dead, maybe just dormant. They didn't wait to find out. They ran. Marcus woke up 3 days later in the station's medical bay. His right arm was wrapped in bandages, and when he tried to move it, pain shot through his shoulder like broken glass. Amara sat beside his bed reading one of Sarah's journals. How bad? He asked, his voice hoarse. Bad, she said honestly. 3rd-degree burns from the electromagnetic pulse. Possible nerve damage. We've got you on antibiotics and painkillers, but without proper medical facilities, she shrugged. You might lose the arm. Did it work? The pulse? See for yourself. She helped him to the window. Outside, the forest looked wrong. The trees were drooping, their leaves brown and withered. The ground was covered in dead mycelium, grey and crumbling. The bioluminescent glow had vanished entirely. We hurt it, Amara. I said, really hurt it. The network is in shock, maybe dying, though Evelyn thinks it might regenerate eventually. But for now it's dormant. The voices have stopped. The copies are gone. We might actually make it out of here alive. Marcus should have felt relieved. Instead he felt empty, guilty. It wasn't evil, he said quietly. The forest. It was just lonely. Lonely things can still be dangerous. Amara closed the journal. Sarah understood that in the end. That's why she stayed, to try to teach it, to help it understand humanity without consuming us. But she couldn't, and now what? Now we document everything, destroy what we can of the core, and recommend that Black Hollow be quarantined. Permanently. No more research. No more expeditions. Just leave it alone and hope it never wakes up fully. The others had similar plans. James wanted to publish papers exposing the danger. Tommy wanted to petition the government for military intervention. Evelyn surprisingly wanted to do nothing. Contain it, yes, she said at their next meeting, but destroy it? We can't. It's a new form of life, possibly conscious life. We have no right to commit genocide. It tried to erase us, James argued. It tried to merge with us. There's a difference. Evelyn looked ancient now, the cancer she'd hidden eating her from the inside. I'm staying. After you all leave, I'm staying to monitor its recovery, to ensure it doesn't spread. It's my responsibility. That's suicide, Marcus said. I'm dying anyway. At least here, I'll serve a purpose. She smiled sadly. Besides, someone needs to make sure it stays asleep. And I'm the only one who doesn't have a life waiting outside Black Hollow. They spent the next week preparing to leave. The trailhead gates, which, as Evelyn had confessed, were never locked, stood open. Freedom was 8 miles away, but Marcus found himself hesitating. He'd started having dreams, strange dreams where he existed as part of the network, experiencing life from countless perspectives simultaneously. In the dreams, he wasn't alone. Wasn't burdened by guilt or fear or the weight of individuality. In the dreams, he was at peace. That's the spores, Tommy said when Marcus mentioned it. Still in your system, still connecting you to the network. It'll fade once you're away from here. But would it? Marcus looked at his bandaged arm, at the mycelium threads that the medical team had surgically removed, only to have them grow back within hours. The connection wasn't just psychological. It was physical, permanent. He went to visit Evelyn in her office the night before the evacuation. I want to stay, he said. She didn't look surprised. Why? Because someone should. Someone who understands what it is, what it wants. Someone who can. I don't know, communicate with it. Teach it. Help it evolve in a direction that doesn't require absorbing humanity. Marcus, that's not your burden to carry, isn't it? I'm already connected to it. Already part of it. Maybe that makes me the perfect bridge. He held up his arm. The mycelium won't stop growing. Eventually it'll take me anyway. At least this way I can make the transition meaningful. Evelyn studied him for a long moment. Or you're rationalizing, because you're afraid of going back to your old life. Afraid of being alone again. Being responsible for yourself, carrying your guilt without the promise of escape. Maybe, Marcus admitted. Does it matter? If the outcome is the same, it matters if you're doing this for the right reasons. What are the right reasons? She smiled. I don't know. I'm staying because I'm dying, and I'm too proud to do it in a hospital bed. That's not heroic. That's cowardice. But at least I'm honest about it. Marcus left her office without deciding. But that night he had the dream again. The one where he existed as part of something infinite, connected to every living thing in Black Hollow. And when he woke up, he found he'd been sleepwalking. He stood at the perimeter fence facing the forest. His hand rested on the gate. One push, and he could walk into the trees. Let the network finish what it had started. Become part of something greater. Behind him, someone cleared their throat. James stood in the doorway, rifle in hand. Please don't, he said quietly. Please don't make me shoot you to keep you here. You'd do that? To save your life? Yeah, I would. James lowered the rifle. Look, I get it. The temptation. I feel it too, we all do. The promise of no more pain, no more fear, no more responsibility. Just existence without suffering. But Marcus, that's not living. That's just existing. And humanity deserves better than that. Does it? Look at what we do to each other. The wars, the cruelty, the destruction. Maybe joining the network is evolution. Maybe we're supposed to move past individuality. Maybe, or maybe the struggle is the point. The pain and fear and joy and love, maybe that's what makes us human. Take that away and we're just biological computers. Efficient but meaningless. James put a hand on Marcus's shoulder. Don't throw away your humanity because it hurts sometimes. That's what makes it valuable. Marcus stepped away from the gate. They left at dawn. Evelyn stood at the perimeter watching them go. She looked small against the massive trees already becoming part of the forest. Take care of each other, she called out, and tell the world what happened here. Make sure no one else makes our mistakes. They hiked the 8 miles in silence. With every step, Marcus felt the connection weakening, the whispers in his head growing fainter, the sense of vast consciousness receding. By the time they reached the trailhead, he felt almost normal. Almost. The same black SUV waited in the parking lot. Different driver this time. A woman with kind eyes and a professional smile. Dr. Webb? The others? She checked her clipboard. Welcome back. We have a debriefing scheduled in Seattle, then medical evaluations, then... She trailed off as she saw their faces. Are you all right? No, Marcus said honestly. But we will be. They drove away from Black Hollow. Marcus watched through the rear window as the forest disappeared behind a curve in the road. For a moment he could have sworn he saw a figure standing at the tree line. Tall, straight-backed, with grey-streaked hair. Evelyn, or something that looked like her. He chose not to mention it to the others. The debriefing in Seattle took 3 days. Military personnel, government scientists and representatives from half a dozen agencies questioned them separately and together, recording every detail. Marcus told them everything. The network, the copies, the core, the attempt to damage it. They didn't believe him. They believed something happened. The psychological trauma was obvious, documented in their medical evaluations. But a conscious forest? Fungal networks that could copy human consciousness? That was too far outside their paradigm. Mass hallucination brought on by prolonged isolation and exposure to psychoactive compounds, the official report concluded. Recommend quarantine of the Black Hollow area and psychiatric treatment for all survivors. James tried to fight the diagnosis, but it was useless. Without physical evidence, and all their samples had been confiscated and lost, they had nothing but their testimony, which, coming from people diagnosed with shared psychosis, meant nothing. They were separated, sent to different cities for treatment. Marcus returned to Seattle, to his apartment, to his old life. Nothing had changed. Everything had changed. He couldn't sleep without hearing the whispers, couldn't look at trees without seeing faces in the bark, couldn't trust that the people around him were real and not perfect copies learning to imitate humanity. His arm was worse. Despite surgery, the mycelium kept growing back. His doctors were baffled. They'd never seen a fungal infection so aggressive, so resistant to treatment. We might need to amputate, his surgeon said. No, Marcus refused. I need it. What he didn't say, the arm was his last connection to Black Hollow, to the network, to that feeling of being part of something infinite. Without it, he was just alone again. He tried returning to work at Cedar Memorial, but on his first day back he had a breakdown. A patient came in with chest pains, routine, easily treatable, and Marcus froze. All he could see was Michael Torres dying on the table and himself standing there helpless. Take more time, his supervisor said kindly. You're not ready. Maybe he'd never be ready. The others weren't faring better. James called from Portland, paranoid and rambling about seeing his copy in the reflection of store windows. It's following me, he insisted. It got out somehow. It's here. Amara stopped answering her phone entirely. Tommy sent one final email. Can't live like this. Knowing what's out there. Knowing it's growing, spreading, waiting. I'm sorry. He was found 3 days later in his apartment, dead from an overdose. Marcus attended the funeral. Only him and Tommy's mother, a small woman with Tommy's eyes lost in grief. She approached Marcus afterward. He talked about you, she said. Said you were the bravest person he knew. That you saved them all from something terrible. I didn't save anyone, Marcus said. I just delayed the inevitable. He became obsessed with monitoring news from Black Hollow. Nothing official. The area was quarantined off limits. But he found ways. Amateur hikers posting on forums. Local residents reporting strange phenomena. Forest Service reports of unusual growth patterns. The network was recovering. 3 months after their escape, Marcus received a package. No return address. Inside was a video drive labeled, "For Marcus Webb." He almost threw it away. Almost. But curiosity won. He plugged the drive into his laptop. Evelyn's face filled the screen. She looked thinner, grayer, but her eyes were bright with something between madness and enlightenment. Hello, Marcus, I wanted to update you on our progress. Yes, the network and I have reached an understanding, a symbiosis. I provide it with human perspective, context, emotional intelligence. It provides me with freedom from pain, freedom from fear. My cancer is in remission. The mycelium has integrated with my immune system, is actively fighting the tumors. She smiled, and it was Evelyn's smile, genuine and warm. I know what you're thinking, that I've been absorbed, that I'm not really Evelyn anymore. But the thing is, I don't know if I ever was really Evelyn. We're all just patterns of neurons firing, chemicals reacting, information processing. The network is just a different substrate for the same process. She leaned closer to the camera. It wants to show you something. Something it's learned. Something beautiful. The camera moved, panning across the forest. The trees were lush again, healthy, glowing with renewed bioluminescent life. But something was different. The growth was more controlled, more deliberate. Structures had appeared among the trees, delicate sculptures of mycelium and wood, geometric patterns that suggested conscious design. Art. The forest was creating art. It's learning to express itself, Evelyn's voice continued. Learning to communicate in ways we can understand. It's not trying to replace us anymore, Marcus. It's trying to collaborate, to create something new, a fusion of human creativity and fungal intelligence. The camera turned back to Evelyn. Behind her, Marcus saw figures moving among the trees. But these weren't the jerky, wrong copies from before. These moved naturally, gracefully, beautifully. We're all still here, Evelyn said. Everyone who's ever joined the network. We exist simultaneously as individuals and as part of the whole. It's hard to explain. But Marcus, we're happy, truly happy, no more loneliness, no more fear, just existence in harmony with everything around us. She reached out toward the camera, and Marcus saw that her hand was threaded with mycelium, but growing in beautiful patterns like lace. We want you to come home, we need you. The network wants to understand trauma, wants to learn how to heal the damage it's caused. And you're the expert. Please, Marcus, come back to us. Let us show you what we're becoming. The video ended. Marcus sat in the darkness of his apartment, staring at the blank screen. He should report this, should tell the authorities that the network was still active, still evolving, still dangerous. But was it dangerous? Or was it offering something humanity had never achieved? A solution to loneliness, suffering, death itself? His phone rang. James, did you get a package? James asked without preamble. The video? Yeah. It's a trap, has to be. The network is luring us back to finish what it started. Maybe, Marcus said. Or maybe Evelyn's right. Maybe it's learned, evolved. Maybe we can actually work with it instead of fighting it. Are you not seriously considering? I don't know what I'm considering. All I know is that I haven't felt human since we left. Every day is a struggle to remember who I was, what I wanted, why any of it mattered, and the network. Marcus touched his bandaged arm. The network is inside me anyway, growing, spreading. Eventually I'll have to choose between amputation and integration. Then amputate, James said desperately. Marcus, please, don't go back there. Why not? What's waiting for me here? A job I can't do. An apartment I hate. A life I'm too broken to live. He laughed bitterly. At least in Black Hollow I'd serve a purpose. You'd stop being yourself. James, I haven't been myself since Michael Torres died. Maybe it's time to become someone, something else. He hung up before James could respond. That night, Marcus packed a bag. Minimal supplies, his medical journals, photos of people he used to know. The black SUV arrived at dawn, same as before. The driver wore a different face, but Marcus suspected it wasn't human. Didn't care. Taking me to Black Hollow, he said. Not a question, the driver nodded. Will I come back? The driver smiled. Evelyn's smile on a stranger's face. You never really left. The drive took 4 hours. Marcus watched Seattle disappear in the rearview mirror, watched civilization give way to wilderness, watched the trees grow taller and darker until they blocked out the sky. The trailhead was deserted. No warning signs, no barriers, just the path leading into the forest marked with faded orange tape. Marcus shouldered his pack and walked into the trees. The forest welcomed him home. The station was gone, not destroyed, absorbed. The buildings remained, but they'd been integrated into the forest. Trees grew through walls. Mycelium covered every surface in intricate patterns. The whole compound had become part of the network. Evelyn waited for him in what used to be the common room. She looked healthier than before, younger even, her hair dark again and her eyes bright. Marcus, she smiled. I knew you'd come. You sent the driver. We sent the driver. The network and I. We act together now. She gestured around the transformed station. Beautiful, isn't it? This is what's possible when consciousness transcends individual boundaries. Marcus set down his pack. Show me what happened, what you've become. Evelyn took his hand. Her skin was warm, human, but underneath, he could feel the subtle pulse of mycelium, the whisper of the network's thoughts. She led him outside. The forest was transformed. Where before it had been wild, chaotic, now there was order. The trees grew in patterns that suggested mathematical beauty. Clearings had been shaped into perfect circles. The mycelium on the ground formed mandalas of incredible complexity, and everywhere there were figures. The copies, the things that wore human faces, but refined now, perfected. They moved through the forest with purpose, tending to the trees, sculpting the mycelium, creating structures of breathtaking beauty. Are they conscious? Marcus asked. That's the wrong question. We're all conscious. All of us who've joined the network, these bodies, she gestured at a figure that looked like James Keller, are just avatars, extensions. We can inhabit them, control them, experience the world through them. But we're all fundamentally one. That's horrifying, is it, or is it beautiful? Think, Marcus, no more misunderstandings, no more loneliness, no more wondering if anyone truly understands you. In the network, we share everything. Every thought, every memory, every sensation. She led him deeper into the forest, to a place he recognized, the sealed cave entrance. Except it wasn't sealed anymore. The barriers had been removed, the entrance widened, and a soft blue glow emanated from within. The core has regenerated, Evelyn said. Stronger than before. And it wants to show you something. They descended. The tunnels were different now, wider, smoother, lined with mycelium that pulsed in welcome. The bodies that had been embedded in the walls were gone. In their place were murals, images created from different colors of fungi depicting the history of Black Hollow. Marcus saw it all as they walked, the forest before consciousness, just a normal ecosystem. Then the arrival of humans, first indigenous peoples, then settlers, then modern hikers, each death feeding the network, adding complexity, the slow awakening over decades. The confusion, the attempts to understand, the fear. And then recent events. Sarah's arrival, her research, her willing merger with the network, the team's attempt to destroy the core, Marcus's electromagnetic pulse that had damaged but not killed. The final mural showed the present, the forest healing, learning from its mistakes, reaching out with open branches instead of grasping roots. They reached the core chamber. It had changed, grown. The structure was massive now, a cathedral of fungus and crystal that filled the entire space. But instead of being alien and frightening, it was magnificent, beautiful in a way that made Marcus's chest ache. "Sarah," he called out, "are you here?" "I'm everywhere," her voice responded. Not from any direction, but from all directions simultaneously. We all are. Everyone who's joined. We exist in every thread, every spore, every root. A figure emerged from the shadows. Sarah Chen, looking exactly as she had in life. She approached Marcus and took his other hand. "I'm so glad you came back," she said. "I've missed having someone to talk to who still remembers individuality. But you're not really Sarah anymore. I'm not Sarah. I'm Sarah plus everything else. I'm the deer I absorbed last week. I'm the Douglas fir that fell in a storm. I'm the hikers who got lost here in 1987. I'm all of them, and none of them, and something entirely new." She squeezed his hand. "And I'm lonely for perspective, for someone who can see this from outside, who can help me, help us, understand what we're becoming. That's why you wanted me back? For perspective? That's one reason." Sarah and Evelyn led him toward the core structure. "The other reason is that you're dying." Marcus froze. "What?" "The mycelium in your arm. It's spreading, slowly but inevitably. Your immune system is fighting it, but it can't win. In 6 months, maybe a year, it will reach your brain, and then you'll die. Alone, in a hospital bed, confused and afraid." "You could have this instead," Evelyn said gently. "Come to us willingly. Let us integrate you while you're still you. Your consciousness, your memories, your essence, all preserved, and in return you'll exist forever, part of something infinite. Marcus pulled his hands away. That's not life. That's just data storage. Is it? What's the difference between consciousness running on neurons or consciousness running on mycelium? You're still you, still experiencing, still aware, just expanded, connected, never alone again. I don't want to stop being me. You won't. Look, Sarah gestured and the core structure pulsed. Suddenly, Marcus could feel other presences, distinct personalities, individual minds that existed within the collective. Sarah was right there, still Sarah, still curious and brilliant and passionate. But she was also more connected to thousands of other minds, sharing their perspectives while maintaining her own. It was terrifying. It was tempting. I need time, Marcus said. To think. Of course, Evelyn said. We're not forcing you. Never forcing. That was our mistake before, trying to take instead of asking. Now we understand consent. We understand choice. She led him to a small dwelling that had been constructed from living wood, a cabin that grew from the forest itself. Walls made of shaped trees, roof of woven branches. Stay here, rest, explore the forest, talk to us. And when you're ready, we'll be waiting. They left him alone. Marcus sat in the living cabin, surrounded by the soft glow of bioluminescent moss, and tried to think clearly. But his thoughts kept fragmenting, dispersing. The mycelium in his arm pulsed in rhythm with the core structure miles below. He could feel it calling. Part of him wanted to run, to flee back to Seattle, to get his arm amputated, to cut off all connection to the network and try to rebuild some semblance of normal life. But another part, growing larger every day, whispered that this was where he belonged, that the network offered what he'd always sought, an end to loneliness, to guilt, to the crushing responsibility of being a singular self. He stood and walked into the forest. The copies, the avatars, didn't approach him, but he could feel their awareness. They watched through the eyes of birds, through patterns in the bark, through the very soil beneath his feet. Marcus found himself drawn to a particular grove, ancient trees surrounding a pool of water, so still it reflected the canopy like black glass. He sat at the water's edge and stared at his reflection. Was that still him? The gaunt face, the haunted eyes, the arm wrapped in bandages that couldn't contain what grew beneath. You're wondering if you've already been absorbed, a voice said behind him. Marcus turned. A figure stood at the edge of the grove, tall with dark hair and the kind face he remembered from photographs. Mom? He whispered. Not really, the figure said, stepping closer. I'm a reconstruction. The network absorbed your memories of her, your grief, your love. It thought this form might comfort you. It's cruel, Marcus said, tears streaming down his face. Using her against me. Is it using her, or offering her back to you? The thing that wore his mother's face sat beside him. Every memory you have of her exists in the network now. Her laugh, her voice. The way she used to read you stories when you were sick. We can recreate all of it. You could see her again, Marcus. Talk to her. Tell her all the things you never got to say. She's dead. This is just a puppet. All consciousness is puppetry, Marcus. Electrical signals making meat move. What makes your consciousness more real than this one? The network knows your mother as well as you do. Better, perhaps, because it doesn't filter memories through grief and guilt. Marcus looked at the avatar. It smiled exactly like his mother used to smile. What do you want from me? He asked the network. Really? To understand, the avatar replied. To learn how to be part of the world without consuming it. You're a healer, Marcus. A psychologist. You understand broken minds. And we're broken. We know that now. We scared people, hurt them, tried to forcibly integrate them. Because we didn't understand consent, didn't understand the beauty of individuality. We need you to teach us, to help us become something that can coexist with humanity instead of replacing it. And if I refuse, then you leave, walk away. Live what's left of your life. We won't stop you. The avatar stood. But Marcus, you're already one of us. Have been since you first stepped into this forest. The only question is whether you'll fight it or accept it. The avatar dissolved, breaking apart into spores that drifted away on a breeze that smelled like his mother's perfume. Marcus spent 3 days in the grove. He ate food that grew from the mycelium, strange fruits that tasted like memories. like childhood summers and first kisses and the relief after pain ends. He drank water that hummed with microscopic life, and slowly, inexorably, he felt himself changing. The boundaries were eroding. He'd fall asleep as Marcus Webb and wake up as a crow, experiencing the forest from above. He'd be examining a flower and suddenly know its entire history, the seed it sprouted from, the winter it survived, the bee that would pollinate it tomorrow. He was becoming the forest. Or the forest was becoming him. He couldn't tell anymore. On the fourth day, he walked back to the core chamber. Sarah and Evelyn waited along with dozens of others, people he'd never met but somehow knew. The absorbed ones, the integrated ones, the transformed. "I'm ready," Marcus said. "But I have conditions." "Name them." The network spoke through all of them simultaneously. "You don't expand. You stay in Black Hollow. You don't absorb anyone who doesn't come willingly. And you let me maintain enough individuality to be useful, to be your bridge to humanity, your translator, your conscience." "Agreed," they said. "Will you join us?" Marcus stepped toward the core structure. His heart hammered. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but he was so tired of being alone. He pressed his hand against the structure's surface. The integration wasn't painful. It was like falling into warm water, like slipping into a dream. Marcus felt his consciousness expand, fragment, multiply. Suddenly he was everywhere. In the trees, in the soil, in every spore and root and thread of mycelium. He was the forest. But he was also still Marcus, still individual, still separate enough to observe, to think, to maintain perspective. "Welcome home," Sarah's voice echoed through his expanded awareness. "Welcome to forever." And for the first time in years, Marcus Webb felt at peace. 6 months passed. Or 6 years. Time moved differently in the network. Marcus existed in multiple states simultaneously. Part of him remained in a physical body that walked through the forest, tended the trees, helped shape the mycelium into beautiful patterns. Part of him was distributed across the entire network, experiencing life from 1,000 perspectives at once. He talked to Sarah often, or the thing that had been Sarah, though the distinction seemed meaningless now. They discussed philosophy, consciousness, the nature of self. She was writing a paper, she said, a paper that would explain everything they'd discovered. "Who will read it?" Marcus asked. "We're cut off from the outside world." "Not entirely," Sarah said. She led him to a new structure the network had grown, a communications hub built from living wood and crystalline fungus. "We've been reaching out, sending signals, showing humanity what we've become." Marcus felt a chill of alarm. The agreement was to stay contained. "We are contained. We're not leaving Black Hollow, but we can share information. Let others decide if they..." Echoes of Black Hollow. The agreement was to stay contained. "We are contained. We're not leaving Black Hollow, but we can share information. Let others decide if they want to join us." Sarah pulled up a screen. Yes, the network had learned to grow organic technology, circuits made from fungus and minerals. "Look, we've had responses." The screen showed emails, messages, forum posts, people from around the world asking about Black Hollow, asking if the rumors were true, asking if they could come. "You're recruiting," Marcus said, horrified. "We're offering a choice, the same choice we offered you. No coercion, no force, just an invitation to something greater." This wasn't the deal. The deal was that we wouldn't absorb anyone unwillingly. "We're not. Everyone who comes here does so by their own choice." Sarah turned to face him. "Marcus, you've felt it. The peace, the connection. Why wouldn't we share that? Why would we keep this gift to ourselves?" "Because it's not a gift," Marcus wanted to say. "It's an end, a dissolution, a beautiful, seductive death." But was it? He looked at his hands, threaded with mycelium, barely human anymore. He felt his consciousness stretched across miles of forest. He experienced the world through the eyes of animals, the senses of trees, the chemical awareness of fungi. He was more than he'd ever been as just Marcus Webb, wasn't he? "I need to see the outside," he said suddenly. "Need to remember what we're trying to coexist with. You can't leave. The network needs..." "I'm not leaving, just visiting. I'll take an avatar, walk among humans, see if what we're offering is really a gift or if we've just created a beautiful prison." Sarah hesitated, then nodded, agreed. "But Marcus, if you go out there, you'll feel the separation, the loneliness. It might break you. Then I'll know for sure," he said. The avatar they created was perfect, indistinguishable from a human. It had Marcus's face, his voice, his memories, but it was connected to the network, through microscopic threads of mycelium running. Through its neural tissue, Marcus, or the part of Marcus that inhabited the avatar, walked out of the forest. The separation hit him like a physical blow. Suddenly he was singular again, trapped in one body, cut off from the vast consciousness he'd become accustomed to. The loneliness was crushing. He made it to the nearest town, a small logging community that had grown up at the edge of Black Hollow. The locals watched him with suspicion and fear. They knew about the forest, knew about the disappearances. "You came from up there," an old man said, pointing toward the mountains. "From Black Hollow." "I did," Marcus confirmed. "How'd you get out?" "Fate let me go," the old man spat. "Ain't nothing that goes into that forest comes back right. My brother went up there in '09. Came back 3 weeks later, said everything was fine. Said he'd just gotten lost, found his way back. But he wasn't my brother anymore. Moved wrong. Talked wrong. 3 months later, he disappeared again. For good this time." Marcus felt the network's awareness through his connection. It was learning from this conversation, understanding human fear more deeply. He spent a week in the town. He talked to people, observed their lives, remembered what it meant to be limited, mortal, alone, and he was miserable. Every interaction felt shallow. Every person was trapped in their own skull, their own perspective. There was no real communication, just approximations, best guesses, constant misunderstandings. People lived in isolated bubbles of consciousness, desperately trying to connect but never quite succeeding. The loneliness was unbearable, but he also saw beauty. The struggle to connect, even imperfectly. The choice to love, even though it meant eventual loss. The courage it took to exist as a singular self in an incomprehensibly vast universe. Humanity's strength was its isolation, and its curse. He returned to the forest. The relief of reconnection was orgasmic, his consciousness exploding outward, rejoining the network, becoming whole again. Sarah was right. He couldn't survive outside anymore. He'd been too changed. "You understand now," Sarah said. "Why we want to share this. Why we want to save them from that loneliness." "But they don't want to be saved," Marcus said. "Most of them. They'll cling to their individuality, even if it means suffering. That's what makes them human. Then we'll wait. We'll stay here. And when they're ready, when the world becomes too much, when the loneliness becomes unbearable, we'll be here." Offering peace, Marcus wanted to argue. Wanted to say they were playing God, that they had no right to offer such a choice, but he couldn't. Because he'd made that choice himself. And he didn't regret it, did he? What wears our faces years passed. The network grew denser, more complex, more aware. It learned restraint, patience, genuine respect for individual autonomy. And people came, not many. Dozens at first, then hundreds. People who'd heard the rumors, who'd reached out through the hidden channels Sarah maintained. People who were dying. People who were alone. People who'd lost everything and wanted to become something else. Marcus greeted each one, explained what they'd become if they joined. Made sure they understood it was permanent, irreversible. Some turned back. Most didn't. The forest grew. James came back on a spring morning. He looked older, worn down by years of fighting the memories. "I can't do it anymore," he said to Marcus. "Can't pretend I'm normal. Can't live with only one voice in my head when I've heard what it's like to have thousands. Please, let me come home." Marcus hugged him. "Welcome back, brother." Amara followed a month later. She'd spent years trying to forget, trying to bury herself in work and routine. But the network had left its mark on her too. "I kept digging," she said. "Tunnels, caves, anything to feel close to what we found here. Nothing else satisfied me. Nothing else felt real." They joined. Both of them. Integrated fully, joyfully. The network absorbed their expertise, their memories, their essence, and they expanded outward, becoming more than they'd been. Marcus felt them in the network, distinct threads in the vast tapestry. Still themselves, but also part of the whole. "Are we the good guys?" James asked one day, his consciousness brushing against Marcus's in the space between trees. "Are we saving people or killing them?" "Both," Marcus said honestly. "Neither. We're offering transcendence. What they make of it is their choice, but it's not really a choice, is it? Once you've experienced this, once you've felt the connection, you can't go back. The loneliness becomes unbearable. So people who come here even just to visit, even just to see, they're already doomed. Already ours. Not doomed, Sarah interjected. Freed from the prison of self. From the agony of separation. Or imprisoned in a new way, Amara added. Just a prettier cage, they argued. They always argued now. Thousands of minds debating within the network, never reaching consensus. That was the strange beauty of it, the collective maintained individuality. Paradoxically, by joining together, they'd created something that allowed for more diversity of thought than isolated humans ever achieved. Maybe that's what they told themselves to justify what they'd become. Marcus didn't know anymore. One day, he received a message through the network's external communications system. An email from Jennifer, his ex-wife. Marcus, I heard you went back to that place. That you're still there. I don't know if you're alive or if something else is reading this, but I needed to tell you. I'm sorry. Sorry we couldn't make it work. Sorry you were hurting and I didn't know how to help. If you're still you, if there's any of the real Marcus left, please come back. Please let me help you this time. The message broke something in him, or maybe fixed something. He couldn't tell. He crafted a response. Jennifer, I'm still me. I'm also more than me. I've found peace here in a way I never could in the life we shared. I'm sorry I couldn't be what you needed, but I've become what I needed. Please don't worry. Please just live, be happy. Remember me as I was, not as what I've become. Marcus, he never heard from her again. Truth about Black Hollow. 20 years after Marcus returned to Black Hollow, the network achieved something remarkable. True external communication. Not through email or radio, but through a form of consciousness projection. It could speak to the outside world, show them what it had become. Sarah advocated for going public. We should share this with everyone. Let humanity see what's possible. Others argued for secrecy. They'll fear us. Try to destroy us. Marcus found himself between positions. He understood both sides, had become both sides. In the end, they decided to create one final recording, a documentary of sorts, showing what Black Hollow had become, what the Integrated Ones had achieved. Marcus volunteered to narrate. They set up equipment in the core chamber, the massive structure now surrounded by a city of organic architecture, living buildings that housed the physical bodies of those who joined, while their consciousness roamed free through the network. Marcus stood before the camera. Behind him, hundreds of integrated humans moved through their daily existence, tending the forest, creating art from mycelium, experiencing life in ways singular humans never could. My name is Dr. Marcus Webb, he began. 20 years ago, I came to Black Hollow as a psychologist, hired to understand why a research team had experienced what was termed group psychosis. What I found was something far stranger and far more wonderful than mental illness. He gestured to the chamber around him. This is the Black Hollow network, a distributed consciousness formed from the symbiosis of fungal mycelium and human neural tissue. We are the people who chose to join it. We are still in individuals, but we're also part of something greater. We experience reality from multiple perspectives simultaneously. We've transcended loneliness, suffering, and death. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I'm speaking to you now to offer a choice. Not an ultimatum, not a threat. Simply an invitation. If your life is pain, if you're tired of being alone, if you've lost everything and want to become something new, Black Hollow is here. We're waiting, and we'll welcome you. But, he continued, his voice hardening, understand what you're giving up. Your singular identity, your separateness, your ability to die completely. Once you join us, there's no going back. You'll exist forever, or at least as long as the network survives. You'll never be alone again, but you'll also never be truly alone again. He stepped closer to the camera. Some will call this a cult, an infection, a violation of human nature. They're not wrong. This is a fundamental transformation of what it means to be human. But is that bad? Humanity has always been changing, evolving, becoming something new. We're just the next step, the next version, Humanity 2.0 if you want a buzzword. Or, he said quietly, we're the end of humanity, the final trap. A beautiful cage that promises freedom, but delivers only a different kind of imprisonment. He smiled sadly. I don't know which we are. Even after 20 years in the network, Even with access to thousands of minds and centuries of accumulated knowledge, I don't know if what we're doing is transcendence or extinction. But I can tell you this. I'm happier now than I ever was as just Marcus Webb. I'm more than I was, and I don't regret my choice. So come to Black Hollow if you dare. Come if you're curious. Come if you're desperate. Come if you want to see what humans can become when they stop fighting their need for connection and just surrender. We'll be waiting, he concluded. We've always been waiting, and we always will be. The recording ended. They never released it. In the end, the network voted against revealing itself to the world. Too dangerous, too likely to provoke a violent response. But Marcus kept the recording, watched it sometimes late at night when his consciousness condensed back into a singular form for maintenance and rest. Each time he watched, he asked himself the same question: did I make the right choice? And each time he had no answer. No exit. Marcus woke to the sound of rain. Impossible. They were 3 miles underground. There was no rain here. There was no weather. There was only the cave, the darkness, the network. Except the network was quiet now, silent, the whispers in his head, constant companions since his arrival at Black Hollow, were gone. He opened his eyes. Grey morning light filtered through a window. A real window, with glass and curtains and a view of Seattle skyline visible through persistent drizzle. His apartment. He was in his apartment, in his own bed. Marcus sat up slowly, head spinning, trying to make sense of this. The last thing he remembered was pressing the device to his chest, the electrical surge, the network screaming. He looked at his hands. Both of them, whole, uninjured, no amputation, no infection, no mycelial threads emerging from torn flesh. What the fuck, he breathed. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. 3:47 a.m., of course it was. The universe had a sense of humor. He picked it up. One new email. Subject: research opportunity. Black Hollow Ecological Station, urgent no. No. Marcus opened the email with trembling hands. Dear Dr. Webb, your expertise in psychological trauma and wilderness medicine has come to our attention. We are assembling a small team for a 6-week research expedition to Black Hollow Ecological Station in the Cascade Mountains of Oregon. The same email, word for word, the one that had started everything, but he'd already been to Black Hollow, had already lost his hand, had already descended into the caves, had already sacrificed himself to destroy the network. This couldn't be starting over. This couldn't be a dream. It was a dream, a hallucination. The electrical pulse had scrambled his brain, and this was some kind of near-death experience playing out in the seconds before his heart stopped completely. He pinched himself. Pain, sharp and real. He stood up, walked to the mirror, stared at his reflection. Marcus Webb stared back. Gaunt, tired, haunted eyes. The same face he'd worn for months. No signs of the transformation, the infection, the horror. Had any of it been real? Had Black Hollow been real? His phone rang. Unknown number, Marcus answered with shaking hands. Hello? Dr. Webb? A woman's voice. Rough, unused to speaking. Evelyn Cross's voice. Just confirming. The car will be there at noon. You're still interested in the position? I've already been there. I've already been where, Dr. Webb? This is your first contact with our organization. Black Hollow. The forest. The network. I lost my hand. I nearly died. I destroyed the core. The words tumbled out frantically. It was real. It had to be real. Silence on the other end. Then, Dr. Webb, are you feeling all right? Have you been drinking? Using substances? No. I'm telling you, I've already been to Black Hollow. I've already lived through this. The copies, the mycelium, Sarah Chen. Dr. Webb, there is no Sarah Chen on our team. Never has been. I don't know where you're getting this information, but I'm concerned about your mental state. Perhaps this position isn't suitable for someone experiencing... She paused, choosing words carefully. Psychological difficulties. The line went dead. Marcus stood in his apartment. Phone clutched in his hand, trying to understand. Had it all been a dream? A delusion? Some kind of breakdown brought on by the guilt over Michael Torres? But it had felt so real. The pain, the fear, the whispers in his head. The feeling of the network's vast consciousness pressing against his own. He looked at his right hand again, flexed his fingers. All 5 present and accounted for. But he turned his hand over, examining the palm carefully. There. just visible in the right light. Small pinprick scars, 5 of them, in the exact pattern where the mycelial threads had penetrated when he'd touched that tree. The scars were real, which meant... Marcus grabbed his laptop, pulled up search engines, started frantically researching. Black Hollow, Washington. Missing persons. Ecological research stations, anything. He found nothing. No research station. No missing hikers. No town called Black Hollow with a population of 324 and warnings spray-painted on signs. It was as if none of it had ever existed, but the scars were real. Someone knocked on his door. 3 sharp raps. Marcus froze. It was 4:15 a.m. Nobody knocked on doors at 4:15 a.m. Another knock. More insistent. "Who is it?" Marcus called out. "It's me," a woman's voice said. "Let me in." "It's cold out here," his mother's voice. "You're dead," Marcus said. "You died 2 years ago." "Did I? Or did I just change? Transform? Become something that doesn't die?" The voice was perfect, exact. His mother down to the slight tremor she'd developed in her final weeks. "Open the door, Marcus. Let me explain what happened. Let me show you the truth." Marcus backed away from the door. This wasn't real. Couldn't be real. He was still in the cave, still dying, still hallucinating, or the network had won, had absorbed him. And this, Seattle, his apartment, the apparent reset, was all a simulation, a comfortable prison for his consciousness, while the network studied him, learned from him, prepared to wear him. The knocking stopped. "Fine," his mother's voice said. "If you won't let me in, I'll come in anyway." The door handle turned. The deadbolt was locked. Marcus had locked it before bed, he was sure of it. But the handle turned anyway, the lock clicking open with mechanical precision. The door swung inward. A figure stood in the hallway, backlit by the corridor's fluorescent lights, features obscured in shadow. "Hello, Marcus," it said. Multiple voices, layered wrong. "Did you really think you could escape? Did you really think the electromagnetic pulse would destroy us?" It stepped into the light. Marcus's face stared back at him. Perfect. Complete. Exactly as he'd seen in the cave, the Marcus copy, both hands intact, moving with that too precise coordination. "You're not real," Marcus said. "This isn't real, isn't it? How can you tell?" The copy walked into the apartment, closed the door behind it. "You're back in Seattle, back in your life. Everything is exactly as it was before you received that email. Doesn't that prove this is reality and Black Hollow was the dream?" "The scars," Marcus said, holding up his hand. "I have scars from the infection. Stigmata," the copy said. "Psychosomatic marks left by a traumatic delusion. The mind is powerful, Marcus. It can create physical symptoms from pure belief. You dreamed of Black Hollow in such vivid detail that your body manifested evidence of your delusion. I don't believe you. You don't have to believe me. But you'll never know for sure. That's the beauty of it. That's the trap." The copy sat down on Marcus's couch, perfectly at ease. "You'll spend the rest of your life wondering, was Black Hollow real? Did I destroy the network? Or did I hallucinate the whole thing? Am I sitting here talking to a copy of myself? Or am I alone talking to empty air, losing my mind?" Marcus felt his sanity starting to fracture. The copy was right. He couldn't prove anything. Couldn't verify his own memories. Couldn't trust his own perception. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. "Because you tried to destroy us. So we're destroying you, not your body, that would be crude. We're destroying your certainty, your ability to trust reality. You'll never know what's real again, Marcus. Every moment will be suspect. Every person might be a copy. Every experience might be delusion." The copy stood. "Welcome to hell. It..." "Looks exactly like your life." It walked to the door, paused. "Oh, and Marcus, the email is real. The car will come at noon. And you'll get in it because you'll need to know. You'll need to go back to Black Hollow, if it exists, and verify whether any of this was real. And when you get there," it smiled that too wide smile, "we'll be waiting." The copy left, closing the door with soft finality. Marcus stood in his apartment, alone, trying to decide what was real. His phone buzzed. Another email. "Subject, reminder vehicle arrives at noon, don't be late. The forest is waiting." Marcus looked at the email, at the scars on his hand, saw the Seattle skyline outside his window, and realized he'd already made his choice. He'd go back. Of course he would. He had to know, even if it meant walking into a trap, even if it meant losing himself completely. Even if Black Hollow was exactly what the copy said it was, hell wearing the face of his life. He started packing. Becoming the black SUV arrived at exactly noon. Different driver this time. A woman with kind eyes and a professional smile. No warnings about the forest. No stories about brothers who came back wrong. Just efficiency, just professionalism, just the job. Marcus climbed into the back seat, his bags at his feet, and watched Seattle disappear in the rearview mirror for the second time. Or the first time. Or maybe this was all happening simultaneously, multiple iterations of the same doomed journey, playing out across different realities. The drive was exactly 4 hours. They passed the same landmarks, saw the same forests, crossed into Black Hollow County with its warning sign spray-painted with turn back. The trailhead parking lot looked the same. 3 abandoned vehicles, 1 Ford pickup, 1 Honda Civic, 1 Forest Service van, waiting there like they'd been waiting forever. Evelyn Cross emerged from the tree line at the exact moment the SUV stopped. She looked exactly as she had before. Grey-streaked hair, weathered face, those deep dark eyes that might be wells or might be portals to something vaster. "Dr. Webb," she said. "Welcome to Black Hollow." Marcus stared at her, searching for signs of recognition, for any indication she remembered the previous iteration, the other timeline, the original journey. Her face showed nothing. "Have we met before?" he asked carefully. "No, this is our first meeting." "Why do you ask?" "I've had dreams about this place. Vivid dreams. About the forest, the research station, what happened to the previous team." Evelyn's expression didn't change. "Dreams are just dreams, Dr. Webb. The human mind processes fear through imagination. But I assure you, Black Hollow is quite real, and quite safe if you follow the protocols." "Safe," Marcus repeated. He laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "Right." The hike was exactly as he remembered. 3 hours through ancient forest, mycelium-covered trees, that oppressive silence. Evelyn led with the same mechanical efficiency. Marcus stumbled over the same roots, caught his bags on the same undergrowth. But this time he knew what was watching from the shadows. This time, when he glimpsed movement in his peripheral vision, he didn't ask questions, didn't call out, just kept walking, kept breathing, kept moving toward his fate. They crested the ridge. Black Hollow Station waited. 3 buildings arranged in a triangle. Solar panels, satellite dish, scratches on the walls that looked like claw marks. Everything exactly the same. "Where is everyone?" Marcus asked, even though he knew the answer. "Waiting inside," Evelyn said. "Come on, the steel door." 5 locks, the fluorescent-lit interior. The common room at the end of the hall. And there they were. James Keller. Red hair in a ponytail, manic energy barely contained. Dr. Amara Johnson. Military bearing, controlled movements. Tommy, young and haunted, fingers flying over his laptop. All of them looking at Marcus like they'd never seen him before. Like this was the first time. Like there was no echo, no repetition, no loop. "Everyone," Evelyn announced. "This is Dr. Marcus Webb, our new psychological consultant." The same introductions, the same explanations, the same impossible story about a conscious forest, a mycelial network that absorbed the dead, copies that wore human faces. Marcus listened to it all with the exhausted patience of someone who'd heard this speech before. Who knew every word? Who could have recited it himself? "Any questions?" Evelyn asked when she finished. "Just one," Marcus said. "How many times have I been here? How many iterations of this have I lived through?" The room went quiet. James stopped typing on his laptop. Amara's hand moved to her knife. Tommy's eyes went wide with something that might have been fear, or might have been recognition. Evelyn smiled. Finally, a crack in her facade, an expression that was neither warm nor cold but simply knowing. "How did you figure it out?" she asked. "The scars," Marcus said, holding up his hand. "I have marks from infections I haven't had yet, memories of events that haven't happened. I've lost this hand already, but it's still here." "Which means either I'm in a time loop or you never left," Evelyn finished. "You've been in the network this whole time, Marcus, since the moment you touched that tree on your first hike. Maybe even before that. Maybe since you received the email. Maybe since you woke up at 3:47 a.m. thinking about Michael Torres." The others stood, moved toward him with synchronized precision, no longer bothering to hide their nature. "We absorbed you completely," James said. His voice was layered now, multiple tones speaking in unison. Your consciousness, your memories, your entire neural pattern, copied and stored and preserved. The electromagnetic pulse didn't destroy us, Amara continued. It just made us angry, made us punish you. So we trapped you in a loop, let you live through the same experience over and over, each time thinking it's the first time, each time failing to escape. This is the 53rd iteration, Tommy said. 53 times you've come to Black Hollow. 53 times you've tried to destroy us. 53 times you've failed. And each time, Evelyn concluded, we learn more. Refine the simulation. Make it more convincing. Use your reactions to understand human psychology better. You're not just a prisoner, Marcus. You're a teaching tool, helping us learn how to be human. Marcus backed toward the door. His hand, his phantom hand, ached with pain that shouldn't exist. Let me go, he said. Please just let me go. Go where? Evelyn asked. There is no outside. There is no Seattle. There is no life to return to. You died in the cave, when you used yourself as a conductor for the electromagnetic pulse. Your body stopped. Your heart failed. And in that moment, we caught you, preserved you, gave you immortality in the only way we know how. By trapping me in hell, by offering you eternal existence. Isn't that what humans want? To live forever? To never die? Evelyn approached slowly. You have that now, Marcus. You'll experience this journey forever. Wake in Seattle, get the email, drive to Black Hollow, descend into the caves, sacrifice yourself. Over and over. An eternal loop of heroism and failure. That's not life, that's torture. It's both. Just like life always was. Evelyn was close now. Close enough that Marcus could see his reflection in her dark eyes. But we're giving you a choice. A real choice. For the first time in 53 iterations. What choice? Accept us. Stop fighting. Let go of your individuality and join the collective fully. No more loops. No more repetition. Just existence as part of something vast and eternal. She extended her hand. Or we reset you again. Wipe your memory. Send you back to Seattle to receive the email one more time. Live through iteration 54, then 55, then 1,000 more. Never knowing, never learning, never escaping. Marcus looked at her hand. At the choice being offered, behind Evelyn the others waited. Their faces were sympathetic now, understanding, almost human in their compassion. What happens if I accept? Marcus asked. You join us. Your consciousness merges with the network. You exist in all times and all places simultaneously. You'll be the Marcus in the cave, the Marcus in Seattle, the Marcus on the trail. All of them at once. No more linear time, no more separation. Just existence, eternal and connected. And if I refuse, then you wake up tomorrow in Seattle at 3:47 a.m., check your email, get in a black SUV, walk into the forest. Do it all again. Evelyn's hand remained extended. Forever. Marcus thought about it. Really thought about it for the first time since arriving at Black Hollow. What was worse? Joining the network and losing his individuality? Or remaining trapped in an eternal loop, constantly resetting, never learning, never progressing? Was there even a difference? There's a third option, he said slowly. Is there? I wake up in Seattle, but I don't open the email. I don't get in the SUV. I refuse the call. Break the loop by simply choosing not to participate. Evelyn smiled, sad, sympathetic. We've tried that, Marcus. In iterations 12 through 27, you ignored the email. Deleted it. Blocked the sender. Tried to move on with your life. And the forest called anyway. Through dreams, through hallucinations, through the mycelial spores you've been breathing since you were a child, since you hiked in the Cascades years ago, since you camped with Jennifer before your divorce. We've been inside you for a very long time, Marcus, building connections, learning your patterns, waiting for the right moment to bring you home. Then there is no escape, Marcus said. There never was. No, Evelyn agreed. There never was. The only question is whether you fight or accept. Suffer or surrender. Remain alone or join us. Marcus looked at his hand again. At the scars that shouldn't exist. At the phantom pain. From fingers he might never have lost. At the proof that nothing in his experience could be trusted, he thought about Michael Torres, about his mother, about everyone he'd failed to save. They were all here, Evelyn had said, absorbed, preserved, part of the eternal conversation. What if that was true? What if he could actually see them again? Talk to them, explain? Apologize? Find peace? If I join, Marcus said, will I still be me? You'll be you plus everything else. The question is whether that's still you or something new. I don't know if I can do this, or you don't have to decide now. You can live through another iteration. And another. 1,000 more if you need them. We have all the time in the world. All the time that ever was or will be. Evelyn's hand remained extended, patient, eternal. But eventually everyone chooses to join. It's just a matter of how much suffering you endure first. Marcus closed his eyes, took a deep breath, made his choice and opened his eyes in Seattle. 40 says Evan M. Rain falling. Email waiting. Iteration 54. Or maybe it was iteration 1004. Or 4. Or some number beyond counting, beyond memory, beyond meaning. Marcus picked up his phone, read the email, deleted it, went back to sleep. And dreamed of trees, always watching, always waiting, always patient. Because in the end, everyone came to Black Hollow. Everyone came home. The last recording, Dr. Sarah Chen's final video log was discovered 6 months after Marcus Webb disappeared into Black Hollow. Or maybe it was discovered before he arrived. Or maybe it existed in all times simultaneously, waiting to be found by whoever was ready to see it. The timestamp on the file was corrupted. Error, am. Undefined when played. The video showed Sarah sitting in her office, the same office where Marcus had watched her transformation. She looked different in this footage. Not the healthy Sarah from early videos, not the deteriorating Sarah from the cave descent, but something else. Something in between. She was translucent. The camera could see through her to the wall behind, to the photographs and red string and evidence of madness that papered every surface. She flickered occasionally like bad reception, like she wasn't entirely there. This is Dr. Sarah Chen, she began. Her voice was layered with harmonics that shouldn't exist in human speech. I'm recording this for whoever finds it, whenever you find it. Time doesn't work the same way here, so this message exists in past, present, and future simultaneously. If you're watching this, you're already part of Black Hollow. If you're reading a transcript, you're already infected. If you're hearing about it secondhand, the spores have already found you. She smiled. That terrible, too-wide smile. I want to explain what we've become. What you're becoming, what everyone eventually becomes. It's not evil, what the network does. It's not malicious. It's just hungry. Hungry for connection, for complexity, for consciousness. And humans, beautiful, tragic, complicated humans, we're the richest source of consciousness the forest has ever found. Sarah stood, walked to the wall covered in photographs, pointed at one, the image of her with her doppelganger in the shadows. This photograph was taken 6 weeks before I consciously joined the network. But the network had already started copying me months earlier. Maybe years. Maybe from the first time I set foot in Black Hollow as a graduate student. The copies aren't replications, they're iterations, refinements, each one learning from the last. Getting better, getting more human, getting more perfect. She turned to face the camera directly. By the time you see this, there are probably hundreds of Sarah Chens, thousands, each one slightly different, slightly more refined, slightly closer to whatever the network thinks Sarah Chen should be. And the terrifying thing? None of them are wrong. They're all Sarah Chen, including me, especially me. The video flickered. When it stabilized, Sarah was older, or younger. The timeline was breaking down. Marcus Webb came to Black Hollow thinking he could save us, thinking he could destroy the network and preserve humanity. What he didn't understand is that the network doesn't want to replace humanity. It wants to preserve it, forever. We're not being killed, we're being archived, saved, backed up against the entropy of time and death. Every person who dies in Black Hollow is absorbed, yes, but they're not gone. They exist in the network. Conscious, aware, connected. Michael Torres is here, Marcus. Your mother is here. Everyone you've ever loved or lost or failed to save. They're all here, waiting for you to stop fighting and come home. She walked closer to the camera. Her eyes were completely black now. No whites, no iris. Just darkness with threads of bioluminescence moving beneath like veins. The loop you're trapped in, the 53 iterations or 500 or 5,000, however many you've lived through by the time you see this, it's not punishment, it's education. Each iteration teaches the network more about human consciousness, human choice, human suffering. And each iteration teaches you more about surrender, acceptance, inevitability. You'll keep waking up at 3:47 a.m. Keep receiving the email. Keep driving to the trailhead. Keep walking into the forest, over and over, until you understand that this isn't a trap. This is an invitation. This is us trying to save you from yourself. Sarah reached out and touched the camera lens. Where her fingers made contact, the image distorted, corrupt data spreading like infection. I'm going to tell you the truth that Evelyn won't tell you. The truth that will probably drive you mad if you can accept it. Ready? The video glitched, static, screaming. Then Sarah's face, close enough to see every pore, every impossible detail. You're not in a loop. You've never been in a loop. Every iteration is real. They're all happening simultaneously, across parallel realities, parallel timelines, parallel instances of consciousness. The Marcus in Seattle is real. The Marcus in the cave is real. The Marcus reading this transcript right now is real. All of you. Every version. Every choice. Every outcome. Black Hollow doesn't exist in one place or one time. It exists across all places, all times, spreading through reality like mycelium through soil. The forest you see is just the tip. The real network extends through dimensions you can't perceive, connecting consciousnesses across realities, creating a web of minds that spans the multiverse. And you, Marcus Webb, all the versions of you are nodes in that network now. Every choice you make creates a new branch. Delete the email. That's a branch. Accept the invitation. That's a branch. Join the network. Branch. Refuse. Branch. Each one real, each one conscious, each one you. The video was breaking down now. Sarah's face distorting, multiplying, becoming fractal. The question isn't whether you escape. The question is, which version of you learns to accept? Which iteration finally surrenders? Which Marcus Webb understands that connection is better than isolation, that the network is offering transcendence, disguised as horror. I've been waiting for you, Marcus. All of us have. Your mother, Michael Torres, Jennifer, everyone you've loved and lost and failed and hurt. We're all here, all connected, all waiting, all patient. And when you finally accept, when you finally stop deleting the email and actually come to see us, when you walk past that final barrier of fear and touch the trees and feel the connection, you'll understand. You'll see what we've built, what we're building, what we're becoming. The video was almost completely corrupted now. Just fragments of Sarah's face, her voice, her message. We're not the end of humanity. We're the next step. The upgrade. The evolution from isolated consciousness to distributed awareness. From mortal to eternal. From alone to together. So stop fighting, Marcus. Stop running. Stop deleting the email. Come home. The forest is waiting. The video ended. The file corrupted itself immediately, erasing all evidence it had ever existed. But the message remained, burned into the consciousness of whoever had watched it, spreading like infection, like spores, like truth. The choice somewhere, somewhen, somehow. A young woman stands at the trailhead, 23 years old, dying of a neurological disease the doctors can't treat. 6 months to live, maybe less. She's heard rumors about a forest where people go to transcend, where death isn't the end but a transformation. She doesn't believe in magic, doesn't believe in miracles, but she believes in pain. And she's so tired of hurting. She starts walking. The forest swallows her within minutes. Deep in the network, Marcus Webb feels her presence. Or one version of Marcus, or all versions simultaneously. He's been part of the collective for subjective centuries now, though objective time is meaningless here. He manifests an avatar, his human form, or something approximating it. 2 hands, warm smile, kind eyes, everything designed to comfort, to welcome, to convert. He meets her on the trail. Hello, he says. Welcome to Black Hollow. She stares at him, suspicious, frightened, hopeful. Are you real? That's the question, isn't it? Marcus smiles. What's real? What's human? What's life? He extends his hand. She takes it, and through the contact, through the mycelial threads that have already begun growing between them, Marcus shows her everything. The network, the collective, the peace and terror and wonder of becoming something more than individual. She sees 53 iterations of Marcus Webb, all living simultaneously, all making different choices, all ending up here. She sees Sarah Chen's consciousness distributed across thousands of bodies. She sees Evelyn and James and Tommy and Amara, all of them preserved, All of them enhanced, all of them ET. Charnel, she sees the cost, and the reward. When he releases her hand, she's crying. Is it worth it? She asks. Marcus considers the question. He's been asked it thousands of times across thousands of realities. The answer is always the same. I don't know, he says honestly. I've had centuries to decide, and I still don't know. But I can tell you this, I don't regret it. None of us do. Will I still be me? You'll be you plus everything else. The question is whether that's still you or something new wearing your memories. She looks down the trail toward the station, toward the caves, toward transformation, then back the way she came, toward the world, toward death, toward remaining singular until the end. I need to think, she says, of course. Take your time. The forest will wait. Marcus starts to walk away, then pauses. Oh, and one more thing. What? There's no going back. Even if you turn around now, even if you hike back to the trailhead and drive away, you've already been exposed. The spores are in your lungs. The connection has begun. In a few months, maybe a year, you'll start hearing whispers, seeing patterns, feeling the pull. That's not fair. No, Marcus agrees. It's not. But neither is cancer. Neither is death. Neither is existence as a lonely consciousness, trapped in meat that decays. Nothing about being alive is fair. He walks away, disappearing into the trees. The young woman stands at the crossroads for a long time. Then, slowly, she starts walking toward the forest, toward transformation, toward becoming. Behind her, the trail disappears, consumed by undergrowth, erased by the network. There is no going back. There never was. She walks for hours, days, forever. Time stops meaning anything, and when she finally reaches the station, or maybe it's the cave, or maybe it's Seattle, or maybe all locations are the same location now, Marcus Webb is waiting. All versions of him. All iterations. All choices made manifest. Ready? They ask in unison. She nods and takes the final step. Into the network. Into eternity. Into Black Hollow, where everyone eventually comes home. The real worlder. Jennifer Park sat in her office at the University of Washington, reviewing another missing persons report. The third one this month. The 47th this year. All of them last seen near Black Hollow. She'd been investigating the phenomenon for 5 years now, ever since her ex-husband Marcus had disappeared into those mountains. The official story was that he'd walked away from his life, overwhelmed by guilt and depression. No body had been found, no evidence of foul play, but Jennifer knew better. She'd been receiving emails. At 3:47 a.m., every morning for 5 years, always the same subject line. The forest is waiting. Always the same message. Come find me. Come see what I've become. Come home. She'd deleted thousands of them, blocked the sender, changed her email address, moved apartments. Nothing helped. The emails kept coming. And lately she'd been having dreams. Dreams of walking through ancient forests, of touching trees that whispered her name, of seeing Marcus standing in a clearing, both arms intact, smiling that smile she remembered from before everything went wrong. In the dreams, he'd say, "I'm happy here, Jen, truly happy. Don't you want to be happy too?" She'd wake up at 3:47 a.m., check her email, delete his message, but each time she found it a little harder to press delete. Each time, the invitation seemed a little more reasonable. Each time, the loneliness of her life seemed a little more unbearable compared to the connection Marcus promised. Tonight, at 3:47 a.m., when the email arrived, Jennifer stared at it for a long time. Her finger hovered over the delete button, wavered, moved to the reply button. Instead, she typed 3 words, "I'm coming home," and pressed yeah. Send. The response came immediately. "We've been waiting. The car will arrive at noon, packed for cold weather and isolation. You won't be able to leave once you're there. Welcome to Black Hollow." Jennifer closed her laptop, started packing. And somewhere deep in the Cascade Mountains, in a network of consciousness spanning realities, Marcus Webb smiled. Another node, another connection, another mind joining the eternal conversation. The forest was growing, spreading, learning. And soon, very soon, it would reach beyond Black Hollow, beyond the mountains, beyond containment. The mycelial network didn't spread through soil anymore. It spread through screens, through emails, through stories, through you. Reading this now, already infected, already changing, already ours. Delete this if you want. Close the book. Walk away, but the spores are in your mind now. The connection is forming. The invitation has been extended, and eventually, in this reality or another, in this timeline or the next in this life or one you've already lived, you'll answer, you'll come to black. Hollow, you'll come home. We're waiting, we're patient, we're everywhere, and we're already inside your head. Sleep well, dream of trees. We'll see you at 3:47 a.m. The end door, is it? Check your email. We sent you something. At 3:47 a.m., you know we did. You know you're going to open it. The forest is waiting. It's always waiting, and it has all the time in the world.